Thank you very much. On the stage, I'm going to call upon our CEO of the Society Institute for Social Justice, May Lebu, and she is basically going to tell us about the organization Society, and welcome every single one of you for joining us today. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Kelly. Let me start with an apology of saying I never know how the protocols go. So all protocols observed. We still say ladies and gentlemen. Let me start by saying colleagues and comrades, thank you so much for taking time out of your busy schedule and spending this morning with us. As Kalalelo said, this is indeed a very important and exciting moment in the history of Society, and we are very grateful that when we called you, you heeded the call. I would like to acknowledge the presence of the representatives of the different political parties. I will introduce the panelists at a later time when we get into our discussion. But this event is also in collaboration with a number of partners, Country Duty, the Total Shutdown and Corruption Watch, who have partnered with us as one of the projects of the Yet Uhuru digital content platform. I would also like to acknowledge funders who make the work that we do at Society possible. In particular, Yet Uhuru was funded by the South African Media Innovation Program, Summit, and our other funders who support the work that we do at Society, particularly with young women and girls, the European Union, the National Department of Health, Anglo-American Chairman's Fund, which is represented here, the Global Fund, and Humanity. Today is really an important day. Having been successful and being identified by many South Africans as one of the leading organizations in South Africa, in 2016 we asked ourselves, after 20 years of being a civil society organization, what should our relevance be if we wanted to survive 20 years into the future? We asked a number of key stakeholders outside about who they thought or what they thought organizations like Society should focus on. And in 2016, in August, we reviewed the outcome of that process by relaunching ourselves into the Society Institute for Social Justice, a feminist organization for social justice for young women and girls. Following on that new vision and new direction, in 2017, myself, Kutsako, a colleague here, and Shireen, applied for a process that was advertised by Timuluhong called the GemLab process. And that gave us an opportunity, while we were a big organization dealing with a number of projects, to start dreaming about what we could do. We joined a number of colleagues, some of them in the room here, with ideas. Each one of us had an idea, but each one of us was fueled with the passion of using our ideas to change the world. For Shireen and I, who are young at heart, but not as young in age, we were really humbled by the process. We've been running an organization that is a big Titanic. We started working with young people who spoke about apps, who spoke about processes. And while Shireen and Muzako continued with the process, I ducked and dived and went back to Society. At the end of the project, Summit advertised an opportunity for a number of the startups to start a project or to come and work with them on the project. And that is when the idea of Yet Uhuru started. But before then, part of what the GemLab process was to actually test the idea that we had. So initially our idea was to start a feminist radio station, and very soon we were partnering with the University of Johannesburg for a month, running a feminist radio station. And there's many stories that we can tell about that. But again, it was a collaboration with young women feminists, one of them, Naledi Chirwa, whom I co-hosted a show with, when we were talking about a number of topics on that platform. We have been very, very fortunate that Summit has supported the work that we do, and that we have been able to hand over to an incredible team of young women led by Halalelo to basically bring us Not Yet Uhuru. When we started, as I said, Shireen and I thought of a feminist radio station. By the time the young women had taken over, we were talking blogs, vlogs, podcasts, and some of us who are still young at heart had to go and learn very quickly what all of those things mean. And I think today you are going to see exactly the kind of work that is happening. But this work could not have happened if we had done it on our own and we had done it alone. When we thought of what is one of the campaigns that Not Yet Uhuru could start with, we looked at the work that was happening in society. And we were really inspired by the work that feminists, particularly young black feminists, were doing in the space. And we woke up one day and we looked at this Facebook page that a number of young women had started that is now famously known as the Total Shutdown. We reached out to them as they were organizing their first march. And I think you will agree with me that as a country, we have never in a long time been as inspired as when young women came together and they said, enough is enough. We were called equally by other partners who have equally carried the baton of active citizenship in the form of Corruption Watch. We have really looked at corruption, the big corruption that is the subject of commissions now, but the small corruption, or what can be perceived as small corruption, like the corruption that happens in schools and police stations. And we are very happy that when we called the Total Shutdown Corruption Watch, they were very willing to join us on this campaign. We were also in awe of the work that some people, we thought, when we looked at social media, calling themselves the country duty, could manage to do work better than the police. So one day you look at a video, somebody has been kicked in the street in Pretoria, and hashtag country duty. In 5 minutes, you know who the victim is, you know who the people are. And we've just been in awe about what social media has done and how many people are harnessing it for a social good. So we are very indebted to these organizations who are our initial partners. For us, this is just the beginning of a long journey, and we know that Not Yet Uhuru is going to be a platform that we are going to invite many more other partners to join us. We've already had a lot of questions about Not Yet Uhuru, about who is represented on Not Yet Uhuru, who's got a voice on Not Yet Uhuru, and that's exactly the thing. We feel that as Soul City, like when we started 20 years ago, we are an enabler rather than the ones that provide the solution. We hope that this platform will be as democratic as our founding mothers and fathers envisaged democracy to be as inclusive as possible. And we hope that in your engagement with us, you will enrich us. And that a year later, 5 years later, 10 years later, 20 years later, when some of us may or may not be senile, we will look back and say, we were there when it started. In conclusion, I would really like to end with the words of Nene Tambulu, who we named Not Yet Uhuru after a song that she had sung very eloquently.
Yes.
And today. In her song, Not Yet Uhuru, some of the words that she says are, Tina asingavoti, silala emikhukhwini, akukho umehluku kulelizwe, khawula makhamandela. Loosely translated, those of us who don't vote, we sleep in shacks, there is no difference in this world break the chains. I therefore ask all of us, particularly those that we have voted in office, those who carried our dreams into this democracy. How can Mama let us say, Tina Asinga voting, and 24 years after voting, we are still sleeping in shacks. Think about it. Thank you very much.
I'm here to basically introduce myself formally and also introduce the project. As I said, my name is Haili Kidijang. I am a Botswana girl. From the Northwest, and I'm part of a clan called Batlago. Why that is important to know is that we're elephants. And the fun fact about elephants is that we are gentle giants, which means that we have a PhD in minding our own business and eating plants, but dare you come for us. So that is something to know when you're dealing with me. So I am very gentle. But if you come for me, I'll come for you. I am inspired by the mind of Stephen Banduwiko. I draw strength from the deliberateness of Brenda Fassie and aspire to lead my life with the grit of Nomzamo Madikizela Mandela and the command and swagger of Cleopatra. I am awakened each night by the pulsating beat of liberation ululating in my ears. I write for people whose names get underlined in red by Microsoft Word, and I'm here to occupy a space at this occasion. I am an African, a woman. As tiny as I am, I may stand here as one, but like the words of Maya Angelou, I come here as 10,000, as I recognize that I represent a dream fulfilled by my ancestors. Somewhere throughout the great history of Africa, I imagine there to be a village girl in Niger yearning to escape the possibility of marriage before 18. A Libyan girl appealing for her life to be considered more valuable than that of an auction slave, and a group of grandmothers gathered in Zimbabwe praying for their grandchildren to see the new dawn of a new democratic era. With the awakenedness that I may never be able to amplify the voices of these timeless spirits, nor reflect the true light of the once dark continent, I truly, truly believe that Africa's time has come. There are finally voices, African voices, speaking on African issues. And Yet Uhuru has created that platform for young black girls between the ages of 18 and 35. Today, we are born of a species that toiled the land. We are a cabinet of girls committed to voicing out our opinions and seeing the dawn of Uhuru. But we also believe that power used to dominate and destruct has never been the teachings of feminism. Thus we, the women of Africa, vow to protect our magic in this unbalanced maze of masculinity. It's the 13th of November and Yet Uhuru. Yet Uhuru, as our CEO started, it was supposed to be a radio station, and it's still our goal for it to be a feminist radio station. But due to the regulatory environment in South Africa, they're not issuing out any licenses. So we had to re-strategize to say, okay, they're not going to stop us. We're still going to talk this freedom. So how do we position ourselves in the market so that we can reach, because we're not confined to a radio station and the area in which, how can we effectively reach a global audience on and shining a light on African issues? So 13 young women, it's not, some of them aren't that young. But we say that it's an intergenerational conversation because we truly believe in the saying that the youth may go faster, but the elders know the road. So we have two mamas, and I think like elephants as well, they lead from the back. So elephants lead from the back, and they have guided us into creating this platform. The platform, what you will find if you go to www.notyetuhuru.com is that you will find podcasts, vlogs such as this one, blogs, and also photography. And the themes that we have decided to focus on are news and politics, a 360 view on the woman's body, so looking at SRHR and other, and also one of the things that we really want to do on this platform is really have a discussion around mental health, because when we talk about our bodies, we really delve into our mental health. So this is a space where we're going to give a lot of space for people to speak about that. Pop culture and art, because we are young and we need to have fun, but also a space for men. It's so not that we're inviting men to speak on our platform. We are speaking to men, but also engaging them on our issues so they can hear from us without interrupting us. So I think it's important that we have done, but most importantly, we want this to be a home for activists and to be a healing space, because we believe that activists really carry a lot alone. So this space can be a space where they can offload, and like the quote says, if we're going to heal, let it be glorious. So this is what Not Yet Uhuru is about, and we have partnered with Wits Radio Academy. Wits Radio Academy, they have a network of community radio stations. So our podcast will be given to these community radio stations. Our focus for now is on campus radio stations, because that's where we want to breed these feminists. They've already started, and there are things that we've seen with the Fees Must Fall movement and the women who took leadership there, what has been happening in roads. So we really want to target that age group, because we feel that is a strong ally. We have also partnered with the Wits School of Journalism. So the honors and master's students will be given this platform to publish their work. And our role as Soul City and Not Yet Uhuru would be to go into the newsroom and also just speak about the importance of feminist reporting, because we believe that the media is a very, very crucial tool to our freedom, but the people who produce the stories and who produce the media need to be really conscious and aware of our issues as women in this country. In civil society, like they said, we've partnered with Corruption Watch, Country Duty, and Total Shutdown, and their role is to really amplify, help us build a movement. And what the main aim of Not Yet Uhuru is to build a social movement, is to get young black women across the continent, firstly, because young women under the age of 35 are the biggest population on the continent. And to the political parties, I want to say that you should really note that, and because 57% of women are likely to register and vote. So our vote is the vote as women. Singani susa na nini? So when you come and speak to us, please be very mindful of the power that is in this room, the power that is on this platform as Not Yet Uhuru. And we're really saying we're being very unapologetic about taking back our freedom. We don't just want the land, we want it all. Yes. So... And one of the good news is that we are speaking to other international organizations about, because there's been a very, very big interest about replicating this movement globally. So we're saying that the Feminists Bayeza, they are here actually, and we really would like you to engage with our platform, to share our stories. Oh, I forgot one more thing about explaining the roles of the different mediums that we've chosen. So with podcasts, we're looking at systematic oppression. So it's an aerial view on discussing very high-level news and politics or whatever topics that we are. It's a very high-level view on how young black women or black women are still systemically oppressed. With the vlogs, it's a more personal view. Like you saw, we went into the homes and into the communities to get their views, to see how this systematic oppression affects their lives in their daily lives, in their villages, and their communities. With photography, and you can see we have a feminist Bang Bang Club, and some of our members are here. You can, after, or if you haven't, engage with some of the photography. So we want to make sure that you get our message in as many mediums as possible. And people prefer different things, so and with creative writing, our bloggers, their responsibility is to write us back into history. We want our daughters to know who we are, that we existed, because a lot of the time when we think about girl freedom fighters, it's very difficult for us to locate them, even though I know for a fact that they were there during the struggle for political freedom, but there are very few of them, and we, as Not Yet Uhuru and the bloggers, are going to firstly go find who those women are, because we need to celebrate them, but also document the women of today so that the future can have a reference to who we are and what we have been about. That, in a nutshell, is Not Yet Uhuru. We would like you to engage with us. And really, the panel for today that is about our election campaign, we're triggering our election campaign. We're saying for next year, 2019, a feminist government. We're not interested in 50-50 representation, wonke umuntu. No 50-50. We're saying that it must be a particular outlook on a feminist government. And in the same way, you can't stop the fourth industrial revolution. It's coming. Technology is taking over. Sometimes I think about, are we going to win or the robot's going to win? Like, I'm not quite sure what's going to happen there. The same way we can't stop the process is the same way you can't stop the feminist revolution. It's coming. It's here. We are ready to come for it. So what we're saying with everything is that you need to really listen, because like the girls, and some of them are here, and I think it's very, very important to acknowledge, for me, our foot soldiers in the rural villages, our social advocates. Can they please stand up? Please stand up, girls. I think it's very important to acknowledge them, because you guys are the reason why we're here. Your voices matter. When I saw sometimes, like when we were shooting the vlogs, on the kind of conditions that you guys live through, it's unfair. You deserve better. We're going to make this a better place for you. Not Yet Uhuru is as much yours as is everybody else's. And I think with that, we need to also acknowledge that, yes, this is a great platform, and this is one of my pet peeves, that we're creating, as Soul City and the 13 young women, this great platform and content, but data. how are those girls going to access this information? There's no signal, there's no infrastructure. So again, it feels like we're creating an elitist movement. So we're appealing to our heads, we're appealing to government that data should be a basic human right. It should be taken like that. If the economy is digital, then everybody needs to have access to the tool in which they will create a better life for themselves. A better life for themselves. And that is us from Not Yet Uhuru. Amandla. I forgot that I'm double playing this. Now we're going to have our keynote address by Ms. Pamela Moore. We're changing things a bit on the program, as you can see. I thought it was good for us to have this discussion before we go into the panel. Canada and Sweden are feminist governments, were the two top feminist governments in the world. In Africa, Rwanda and Ethiopia look like they are setting the precedent. So we don't like to stay behind. So we want a feminist government from next year, 2019 also. So we're going to hear from how they have put together, or how they managed to get it right in terms of creating a feminist government, and any support or messages for us on how we can, as a South African and other developing countries, move towards a feminist government. Ms. Pamela Moore from the Canadian High Commission.
Thank you. Good morning. It's a great pleasure and honor to be here with all of you today. Thank you very much for inviting me to speak and say a few words about the Government of Canada and our feminist foreign policy and our feminist government, and hopefully that provides a few interesting ideas that inspire this conversation today. I'm really pleased to be here also because we have had the occasion to partner with Seoul City Institute for Social Justice in small ways, but important ways in the Jam Lab project. And as we were a small contributing partner in that project. And so I'm thrilled to see how the project has evolved. I remember when there was the discussion about the radio station, and now to see the platform that you're launching. So congratulations. I know that there's an incredible amount of work that's gone into getting you here today. So I'm with the Canadian High Commission based in Pretoria, and I wanted to say just a few words about feminist foreign policy and gender equality and women's empowerment. I think we all know, and we've already heard some very inspiring words this morning about gender equality and women's empowerment. It's obvious that women have made significant contributions around the world to global peace and security, to eradicating poverty, in politics, in business, in civil society. It's obvious and it's evident everywhere in the world. Women have also been recognized and are increasingly being recognized around the world in those leadership roles that they play. Women have been given Nobel Peace Prizes just this year. The Nobel Peace Prize was shared by Denis Mukwege and Nadia Murad. And in fact, the topic was very relevant to some of the themes that we're talking about today, because they were awarded the Nobel Peace Prize for their work in ending sexual violence as a weapon of war. So we're seeing more and more through all kinds of different examples that gender equality and women's empowerment is taking its rightful place and being acknowledged as something that needs to be given more weight. as another example, there's a Canadian woman who was awarded the Nobel Prize, who shared the Nobel Prize for physics just this year as well. So not only are we talking about peace and security, we're talking about politics, we're talking about science, we're talking about business in all areas. So there are advances that are being made around the world, but we also know that there are tremendous challenges, and that's part of what your platform is about, is addressing those challenges here in South Africa specifically, and inspiring change elsewhere as well. Gender discrimination is ingrained in many societies still, and there are many countries that still have laws that discriminate against women, as we all know. We also know, and you've spoken to, and your signs as we came in today speak to gender-based violence and the horrific role that plays, and the challenge that plays in society, and how that needs to be addressed. And I think that we're seeing some acknowledgement at a leadership level with the Gender-Based Violence Summit, with the movement of women's groups and the total shutdown, that there's things are going, I think, towards greater acknowledgement of the need to change and the need for action to change. So you wanted me to talk a little bit about Canada. We have in Canada, when our Prime Minister Justin Trudeau came to power in 2015, he proudly declared himself a feminist, proudly declared that we had a feminist foreign policy, and his first cabinet was a gender-balanced cabinet. Now, to your point about it's not just about an equal number of men and women, the other message that has been very clear from our government and from the highest leadership levels is that the people who are in our case in cabinet, the women who are in cabinet, they're there because they're the best people for the job. So it's about, I mean, there has to be an acknowledgement and leadership at the highest levels to advance gender equality and women's empowerment, but it's also about people who are the best for the job, and women are the best people for the job and the most qualified in many cases. So this is what we're talking about. He famously said when the cabinet was announced, a number of people said, "Oh wow!" And I mean, even in Canada, where I think we've come a long way, we still have a long way to go. And people were saying, "Wow," and balanced cabinet, and said to the Prime Minister, "Well, why and what inspired you?" And his answer was, "Well, because it's 2015." That was his answer. I mean, it's been long enough. It's 2015. It's time for change, and that's sort of been a famous quote that's followed him since then. But so that leadership is really key. And then for Canada, what we've then done is we developed and announced a feminist international assistance policy to go with it, and a feminist foreign policy. So shortly after our Prime Minister came to power, they worked to develop an international assistance policy that put women and girls and gender equality and women's empowerment at the heart of everything we do. So we had to rethink everything that we do globally in our international assistance and everything that we do in our foreign policy. So we're now being challenged as people who work in government that the first thing we need to think about in any new action or policy we develop is what is the impact on women and girls, and how is that going to advance gender equality and women's empowerment? So it really, the leadership comes from the top, but then it has to trickle down, and everyone has to be challenged that it has to be in everything we do. And so that is, I mean, that's one way that we're managing to implement this, and we're being, you know, as public servants, you know, when you talk about service delivery and people working in government, we're challenged on a regular basis if we put forward actions or policies to say, okay, so tell me, how is this going to advance gender equality and women's empowerment, either at home, because we still have work to do in Canada, or in our work that we're doing globally and in our foreign policy. To go along with that, we've been challenged in our trade agenda to ensure that everything we do, we have a progressive trade agenda that now puts women, a focus on women in business at the center of what we're doing to promote economic ties around the world and economic development back at home and entrepreneurship back at home in our own country. And we also, in other areas, including women, peace, and security, we have a national action plan on women, peace, and security that's taken on greater emphasis. There's also challenges at home as well, and those our Prime Minister has placed a greater emphasis on addressing those. We have Indigenous populations in Canada that represent about 5% of our population and that have historically been marginalized, where women in those communities have faced higher levels of violence and all other challenges in accessing education and healthcare. And our government has placed a focus on concrete ways to address those challenges and provide service to those people. The other interesting thing that you might be interested in here, so Canada was the presidency of the G7 this year, and our Prime Minister named a Gender Equality Advisory Council of experts from around the world, including South African head of UN Women, Phumzile Mlambo-Ngcuka, which I can't pronounce very well, so sorry for the pronunciation, who was part of that advisory panel, who put forward a set of recommendations to G7 countries on what we should be doing globally. So the leadership starts at the top, but it has to trickle down, and it has to trickle down through government, through private sector, through civil society, but it also comes the other way, right? I mean, it's leadership from the top, and it's actions from the ground up, and that's very much what your action is about today, and the two have to come together. So we're continuing to work on it. We still have lots to do, but I think we're going in the right direction. And we know, I mean, I think what's key is, and what our Feminist International Assistance policy puts at the heart of it, is that women and girls have to be a part of, without women and girls' action, we won't have a more peaceful, prosperous, and inclusive world. I mean, women and girls are equal partners in that, and if they're not included in the process, we're not gonna make those strides in society that we want to. So those are, I mean, that's a little bit where we're at. Here in South Africa, we're partnering with various civil society or women's organizations, and we're putting in place some other programs. So we're looking forward to, as Canada, working more closely with South Africa, both with civil society and with government, on programs that work on gender equality and women's empowerment. And we look forward to watching closely and seeing how we can support your work. So thanks a lot. Look forward to hearing more from the panel.
I would like to call one of our members, our team members from Yet Uhuru. Her name is Lebohang Masango, and she's going to present her art. She's one of the hosts. She's a podcaster and blogger for the pop culture and arts segment on our platform, which is called Propaganda. Welcome, Lebohang.
Good morning, everyone. So I will be reciting a poem called The House That We Built, and it's just a reflection on our society and a reflection of how I was feeling at the time regarding what I see as being the collective trauma in our country. And I must say, I was a little less hopeful when I wrote this, but I'm much hopeful and more active just in being the change now. All this country has ever done is break my mother's heart, which is by way of the fact that a house divided against itself can never stand. Let me explain. When the whole world has slowly watched your country strip the dignity from your skin, it will feel like your elders live with phantom guns to their backs, loaded full of triggers within. Somewhere between soul and spirit, a great hollow filled with bullets and beatings and memories too terrible for even history to make peace with. A debilitating open secret, it's in each breath, that menacing whisper of the collective trauma that has never left us. How many crime statistics must escalate before we see this? How many baby girls and women must have their bodies ravaged before we believe this? How many black men must sink to the bottom of newspaper wrapped brown bottles before we discuss this? How many cops have to kill their families and themselves before we fix this? Memories too terrible for even history to make peace with. The collective trauma of living to be equated with filth will do so much in orphaning you. Sour milk and struggle will not comfort you. This motherland of your birth will other you. Then eventually, but reluctantly, she reaches arms out to cover you while mourning to the blues of that classic Langston Hughes. What happens to a dream deferred? Does it rot? Does it run? Does it dry up like a raisin in the sun? Blood and dust swept under rugs have a way of growing legs and becoming the demons that haunt us from right beneath our beds. This is the house that we built. And we must have been playing house. That's the only way to explain it. When the tortured psyche of a people somehow becomes worldwide entertainment. The gripping horror story of apartheid and how the Rainbow Nation overcame it. Over 300 years of oppression squeezed into 15 minutes of fame and lights, camera, action, cue, My African Dream, Matiba Jive, and a bunch of smiling natives dancing happily off into the sunset claws with apartheid perpetrators. And cut, lights dim, then reality sets in. All this country ever does is break our hearts, which is by way of the fact that a house divided against itself can never stand with a back door revealing black and white rainbows that contain no pots of gold. We live under glass ceilings with the catchphrase economic freedom flashing in bold and windows that show us bartering ballot papers against our souls. This is the house that we built. Sticks and stones and misogynistic men do not for good walls make when all they do is break and burden our foundation, which is our women, while politicians cash in building blocks and leave us with more than 20 years worth of promises to hold. We express dissent, yet continue to rock as if we could ever construct anything solid with the question marks we are being sold. This is the house that we built. The violence that was then sown is the poverty we now reap. The dreams we kill at the mercy of politicians' daily deceit. The blood we spill, the morgues we fill. And this is the house that we all build. Thank you.
On that note, Not Yet Uhuru is ready to build a new house. I am going to call our chair for, it's time to get lit now. We want to hear what they're going to say to us. So I'm going to call our chair to introduce our panel members, and we're going to jump straight into it, and let's hear what they have to say. Thank you.
I had to ask whether that chair is me. Apparently it is. Before I call upon our panelists, you know, it's very difficult not to be triggered by everything that is being discussed here. So I'm going to invite everybody. We are going to have a panel. I wear two hats, and sometimes I don't know which one I wear. I'm also on Not Yet Uhuru as a black woman feminist, and I'm also the CEO of Soul City. So I want to take off the Soul City CEO role and get into my role as a black woman feminist who expresses her anger and gets triggered and owns it when they are triggered about these issues. I'm just reminded of an image when Khali was speaking here of Khali in Alex with her mother, Matshilo Motsei, doing the work on gender-based violence with an organization that she had founded called ADAPT, and protesting and looking at clothes, I think, if I remember the image very well, of people who had been raped, because they say if you wear something like what I'm wearing, you are calling rape. But in fact, it was 3 months old to 70-year-olds to 20-year-olds. And at that time, Matshilo was advocating and dreaming of this different world. And here we are today, her daughter being on stage and reminding us that not yet Uhuru. So I feel quite triggered for me that this is not only about what Soul City, the organization, does, but this is what, for me, our lives are as Black women in South Africa. And I also think that we have been sold a lie by our culture and our religion and decency and diplomacy and education and schooling, that anger knows no place. And my colleagues know that every morning when I wake up and I get into social media, the one word I use very well is msuneri. And msuneri, umsunu is ass. So for me, msuneri is what I feel when I see a lot of the injustices. So all protocols observed in a moment where we are going to get it real. And as I said, just to protect my employment at Soul City, I'm taking off my CEO hat and being the Black angry feminist that I was born with. I cannot come from Manziville with the hopes and dreams that I have, and almost 50 years later, still be fighting the battles that my great-grandmother and my grandmother who came from Pondoland are fighting, and be nice and not be triggered by it. On that note, I am going to invite the three panelists. Do we have a mic? How are we going to do this? That are going to join me in conversation. And in no particular order, we've got Phoebe Potgieter, who's the general manager of the ANC, who will be representing the ANC. Refilwe Ncheke, who is an MPL representing the DA. And Mandisa Mashiko from the EFF. Is Mandisa here? Mandisa is still coming. We also had invited the EFF, the IFP. And unfortunately, the representative who had confirmed told us just at the beginning of this discussion that unfortunately, I think they've taken ill and will not join us. So it's going to be the two of us for now, and then when Mandisa joins us. I'm going to ask a few questions, and I'm going to also invite all of you at some point to ask your questions. I'm very cognizant that we've been having this conversation in English, but if we really want to be representative and want to make the conversation by all women to take place, all people in all of their sexual orientations, we must also allow that people speak in any language that they deem fit. So when we ask questions, please do not feel that necessary that you speak in English. So I'm going to join my panelists. Let me first start by thanking both of you for agreeing to join us. I want to start with an assumption I make, and I'm going to use the words of, was it Gerinel or Berry Roo during the Oscar Pistorius trial. They made some words famous, and they used to say, I put it to you. So, in those words, I put it to you that our government is patriarchal, and that each and every one of the parties you represent
including the EFF when they join us, are also patriarchal and anti-women, even with the representation of women in their parties. So that is the assumption I start with. And I start with it, and I want to remove on the agenda whatever PR spiel you may have about these are the things that we do to women. Because we start, and we are at a place that we are at right now, because while you are respected activists, and I don't know whether explicitly or implicitly or even at all feminists, you are representing parties and at best operating within a government that is patriarchal and therefore not pro-women. So let's get that out of the way, at least from where I'm sitting. Unless if you will convince me and everybody in the room that I am incorrect in my assumption. So my first questions to both of you is, what does a feminist government mean to you? And what would it look like? Or if we even take it away from a feminist government to your parties, what would a feminist ANC look like? What would a feminist DA look like? And the answer cannot be, it will look like how it looks like now. That's not one of the answers that I'm looking for. Over to you, Phoebe.
Thank you very much, and good, is it morning, still morning or afternoon? Let me start off by congratulating Soul City for this platform. I think it's long overdue that we do have a feminist multimedia platform, and certainly looking forward when you are fully fledged radio, and we should talk about how we can assist. What a feminist government would look like and a feminist ANC. I think that I agree with your point that we have a patriarchal government, that we live in a patriarchal South Africa, that in fact the ANC is deeply patriarchal, that since the days of our formation in 1912, it in fact excluded women. Women only became full members in 1943. The first woman was elected, I think, in 1945. So yes, that's where we come from. If one look at over the years, a woman like Charlotte Maxeke, who in 1918 said that despite the fact that you say I can't be a full member, I have the right to talk, I have a right to take women's and my demands to the Prime Minister, and I'm not going to be stopped to do it. So I think that there's been, despite the fact that we are living in a patriarchal society, a patriarchal organization, there has been resistance from women, and hence the inclusion in our constitution of a non-sexist South Africa. So what would a feminist government look like? I think that the issues raised by the Canadian High Commission is important. I think representation matter for women, it matters for black people, it matters for people with disability, it matters for people who are excluded. So I think that, yes, one of the issues that's important is representation. And for me, the second one is an orientation that looks at what does it mean for women. So where that is the question about land. So yes, there's a lot of debate about bringing back the land, and then we saw one of our communal land trusts saying that actually we're not going to give title deeds to women. Now that's unacceptable. It's got to do with whether we look at issues of education, whether we look at issues of violence, policing, security, etc. So for me, a feminist government is both about representation, and it's not just 50-50s. Rwanda has 68% of women in government. They're doing perfect because you have a last critical mass of women in government that say this is the things and this is what is best for society. So it's a combination of the question about representation, and then secondly the question about at every point in time looking at what's the impacts on women and girls and what's the impact on society. Because one of the issues about women is that, and feminist women, is that at every point in time they look at the impact on women and girls, but also the impact on families, the impact on girls. There are international studies, for example, done on looking at the difference between what men and women spend their money on and their incomes on. And women, 80% spend them on their families, on their homes, and men tend to spend it on other things. It's not just South Africa, it's across the world. So electing women and having a feminist government and organizations and political parties, I think will mean that we focus much more on looking at what are the issues that's good for societies, issues of peace, issues of poverty, what happened to children, as well as education.
Thank you very much, and let me say good afternoon to everyone. It's such an emotional day for me, because I'm generally, I'm a feminist at heart, and I'm always fighting women issues. So when you come and you listen to poems like the one delivered, you're actually quite close to tears. Let me start by answering you slightly differently. I think for me, I was re-elected this year at the DA Leadership Congress as the only black female outside of the DA Women's Network, who obviously the woman would be elected because that's women electing a woman leader. But the question that has always been put to me is, how come Refilo is the only woman and the only black on the leadership? And those are things that disappoint. I then take it further. A couple of years ago, Helen has always been a very formidable leader within the DA. However, her cabinet was an all-male cabinet, and the DA was attacked for not having women on it. One of the sad things we find in society is it was because women didn't put their names forward. So for me, a cabinet, a South Africa that is pro-women is basically something that says women must feel confident enough to say, I can take my place without self-judgment. It's also something that says, in the boardroom, when I speak, are my words listened to? Most of the time, I look at our caucus here in Gauteng Legislature, we are 5 women, there's 2 of us in the leadership. But sometimes as you speak, you want to know that you're valued as much as a male counterpart. So the dynamics are a lot more, and I liked what Mefibi said, because also there's a saying that you educate a woman, and if you empower a woman economically, you have more children that can go to school. So many of us carry a lot, and I'm a single mother. I have a child who just recently got diagnosed with depression, and I was talking to a colleague sitting down there to say, we need to have a society that does not discriminate. Some of the words that get thrown at us as women is, it's because you're a single mother, the child needs a father figure. And I said, how does that have anything to do with it? So for me, it's to paint the scenario that we see today and say, quite frankly, sometimes even as women, we pull each other down. Why are we not as women empowering each other? If I see Mandisa and see her struggles, why am I not a rock and a pillar for her? Why, when she's attacked by a male counterpart, why am I not standing up for her in public, not just in the private space, giving support where nobody sees it? Some time back, I wrote a piece about how is it that women must sit on a mattress when their husband dies. I've never seen a man on a mattress. And these are some of the things that come through the generations. Our culture actually marginalizes us. When your husband dies, you can't own a piece of land. You've alluded to that in terms of land. What are we doing in legislation to fight those things? So we shouldn't have to say, no, you must marry the uncle now in order to still remain in the house with the children. Then you're homeless, and usually the mother's the one who's going to carry the children. But a man who loses a wife, remarries, is on the streets, and can get into a taxi without discrimination. You know, you'll see a lady wearing black. Immediately as she enters the taxi, she's shoved to the back seat. Why aren't we vocal about it and saying this is unacceptable? You're actually traumatizing this poor woman who just lost her husband. So for me, society must be, we need to stand up for ourselves, because the reality, and I hate to quote the president, to say that women must help. Women don't abuse themselves. It is the men that abuse women. It is up to us to give advice, but it's up to the men to also recognize what they're doing to us. And usually I say, because I've got 3 young boys, when you attack a man about his mother, you hit the heart. But why aren't men standing up and fighting women's issues? Because it doesn't mean because they're not women, they can't fight women's issues. And generally, I think this is the part where it's also when you walk into the boardroom, people think you must lose your femininity. I want to be a mother and I want to still be a politician and do what I can and balance it without being judged as, actually, you need to be at home in the kitchen cooking.
Yeah. But I guess the points that you are raising are about society in general. I'm talking about you are the biggest opposition right now. And you've got a party that very recently has been in the news for a whole number of reasons. I want to know, what does feminism, a feminist government look like? And what does a feminist DA look like? Because I think we understand the challenges in society as you eloquently put them. But I want to know within your own party, because we now have a representation. We vote, we like political parties, we vote for them, and we send you guys. And if you guys in your political parties are not feminist, you know, so I want to push back to that question again. Not only about broadly in boardrooms in society and stuff like that. What does a feminist DA look like? And what does a feminist South African government look like? Just few points.
Yeah.
What for you would that look like?
One is fighting women's issues. One of the things is making sure, for example, if a woman goes to report sexual abuse, there should be police that are women that can take her somewhere, offer a cup of tea and say, you know what, let's talk about what happened to you. Not an open place where somebody is reporting a crime like I've been mugged, my cell phone was stolen. There should be things such as ensuring that women have rights to own even property. That's what a South Africa should look like. Access to education. Women should have access to education from a very young age. Women should be able to get into businesses as easily as men get into businesses. Women should be able to start businesses and be given preferential treatment around how businesses should be started. Economic empowerment of women is probably one of the key areas to ensuring that women, a feminist South Africa is created. And then we need to educate attitude. And once that is done, and women are dealt on an equal par. For example, yes, as MPLs we get same salaries, but going to private sector, generally for same work, you'll find women still earn far less than their male counterparts. In a feminist South Africa, women should earn the same and be treated as equal. And the word equal should not just be spoken, it must be lived and realized.
Thank you very much. Welcome, Mandisa, and thank you very much for joining us. We started the conversation with a question, and I put it to all the panelists, including yourself in absentia, that all of you operate within a government and a parliament that is patriarchal. And all of you, without exception, represent political parties that are patriarchal. And I even said, unless if you want to challenge that and you challenge, you know, all of us here that maybe your party is not a patriarchal, you'll contest that. So the first question that I ask, and I'm asking you to also respond to, is what would a feminist EFF look like? And what would a feminist government look like?
Thank you, and please accept my humble apologies for being late. We have kick-started our elections work, and as the chairperson of the province, I do get very operational. So all intentions were to be early for this event. It's my favorite topic, and I always look forward to it. So I humbly apologize to everyone else as well, and all the organizers. No disrespect intended. Society is patriarchal. It's not the EFF or the government, it's society. So when you are and by the way, that patriarchy is global. And then if we have to go back and understand how patriarchy entrenched itself in African society, we can well locate it within the colonial tragedy. So we must move from that premise so that it doesn't become an unnecessarily divisive discussion. Of course, we are separate organizations with different ideologies and we are polarized from one another because of our ideology. I will permanently remain polarized to the DA because I'm not right-wing in terms of my economic policy framework as an individual, but equally as a leader of the EFF, which is a socialist, radical militant movement and internationalist as well. I will remain permanently polarized to the ANC because they are also a right-wing organization. They have other problems, yes, such as corruption and racism over and above their right-wing policies. But when it comes to the question of gender, we put ideology aside for 2 minutes, right? And then we agree on certain things which the EFF is very stern about. One, patriarchy in South Africa must be racially discussed. It can't be discussed as a, just because we want to sing from the same hymn book because it's about women and other genders, of course, transgender. I don't know the politically correct terms. I normally say lesbians and gays, and I don't know if it's correct. They'll pardon me if it's wrong, because the terms change every year, so I don't know. I can't keep up. But all our alternative sexual orientation groupings, yeah? So the point that must be stressed is that we must discuss the problems of femicide and anything that stems from patriarchy from a race point of view, because it's not white women who are enduring the rate of femicide that we see, which is almost 4 or 5 times higher than the global average. It's not white women who are enduring economic exclusion in South Africa, and Indian women for that matter. And when I say African, I include so-called colored people because we don't define them as the colored term, understanding its derogatory character. So it's not white women, it's not Indian women, it's African women. And so let's move from that premise. What does the EFF say? We must start with the police, for instance, right? When it comes to the issue of violence, because we must separate the discussion. We must separate it between the social factors, which is the violence aspect, and then the economic factors, which obviously I will come to. But on the social factors, and the most worrying one being the violence against us, the police, the NPA, and the courts are directly to blame for the increase and the not ending increase. There's an increase, but then there's also a rate of increase. Are you with me? So you can have 4 murders this year, next year you have 6, next year you have 8. So there's the rate of increase and the increase. That can be directly blamed, the rate of increase, on the state. Why? Because there's no deterrent. So the EFF says very sternly, like we have said that on corruption, for instance, in our old manifesto, we want minimum 20-year imprisonment because it's possible to set minimum sentences without interfering with the judiciary. Likewise, we want minimum sentences. We want rape to be increased and escalated as a charge to attempted murder, and not because rape of a child, for instance, is not it's not rape, it's attempted murder, if the child survives that kind of onslaught. So we have certain policy positions which I'm not going to unfortunately share with you because they will then become our manifesto, and our manifesto is only going to be unveiled in January like everybody else. But I can speak to certain aspects to say there are those things which you can strengthen in the state to prevent further occurrences, or rather to deter or to discourage further occurrences on the violence side. Let me give you a practical example. Anyone now must log on to the SAPS's website. Go to the landing page and read what the SAPS says about gender-based violence and read what they say they do about gender-based violence. None of those things they do. They say that they have separate reporting rooms. The EFF is going to insist that all police stations must have separate reporting rooms. Another example I can give you for free before our manifesto launch is that we insist that every campus, university or TVET, must have a satellite police station on its premises so that students are not subjected to the pseudo-police service that exists within institutions of higher learning, for instance. We are also going to insist that every public facility must have a social worker. Why? Because we understand that the 20 million people who live in dire poverty in South Africa are subjected to extreme social conditions. And every time they experience a crime, especially women, right, and children and elderly people and people living with disabilities, they are also subjected to the social environment, which is very difficult for them to cope with over and above. So those are some of the proposals that we have that are talking directly to the issue of gender and feminism. And I wanted to also just add that, yes, there's patriarchy in society, therefore there's patriarchy in the EFF. Because the EFF didn't give birth to me. My parents, Freddie Mashego and Nomakula Helen Sam, gave birth to me. So I was not raised by the EFF. The ANC didn't give birth to their members. The DA didn't give birth to them. They found them here in society. So if those men who are in EFF or any other party are patriarchs, that's what their parents gave us. It is now our burden as an organization politically to deal with that, because we are anti-sexism, as you can understand.
I'm very happy you went there, because my next question is linked to that. And I was going to ask, I guess, all of you. We've had Manana, I'm just mentioning the well-known cases. We are having a case in the Northwest with the EFF. We've had cases in the DA. Why must women trust you? We've seen with the total shutdown, women from different orientations, women from different communities, from different social standings, speaking about, like, story upon story about just what they have experienced. And I'm pointing out these examples of what has happened in your parties, leading to what you had said. And I'll start with you, Phoebe, because at that point, when we were desperate, at least I know I was, to finally see you as political parties, whenever your moment came, to challenge that patriarchy happening in your parties. We saw you ducking and diving and doing the Twalaza, the Vosho, and now the Idibala.
Yeah.
Why must we trust you? You know, I know you're going to have manifestos, they are going to be eloquent, they're going to say lovely things. But for me, my test is when it has happened in your home. You know, we can all say we are anti-corruption and anti-crime until you get a call that your child or your brother or your father has been arrested. That's when the test comes. And I use that analogy to say, why must we trust you as the ordinary women who vote for you when Manana and all others, you know, we must see it on Country Duty and we must see it on Twitter. But what we see, it's not that they did it, because I agree with Mandisa that, you know, the parties did not, but we are not even seeing your decisive action. So why must we trust you?
Yeah. I think that's your starting point was the pervasiveness of patriarchy. And when I responded to the question, one of the points that I'm making, that my organization, the ANC, is impacted upon by that patriarchy. And this is why you have always had within the ANC a women's movement. Because we have a women's movement that's present in broader society, but you've also always had women fighting within the ANC since the days of Charlotte Matkeke. Because she was at the ANC conference in 1912, but she couldn't be a member, even though she was as educated as them. But the point is, let me finish the point, so that the struggle against patriarchy in the party, I mean, for example, if you remember in 1991, women in the ANC had to walk out of their conference to get 30%. I mean, we're now talking about 50-50. The question about domestic violence, violence against women are issues that we are fighting in the party. But at the same time, because we have a patriarchal situation, there is pushback. I mean, there's specific example that you mentioned. There has been push from women in the organization to say that there has to be a disciplinary hearing about it. There has been other instances where women have made the same kind of calls. I remember I think it was in 2004 when the late Professor Kader Asmal became the chair of the disciplinary committee of the ANC. And one of the questions that we asked them, have we ever seen anybody convicted of domestic violence or abuse against women, etc., because we know there were cases. And the response to that was, in all of the times of the disciplinary committees, there's never been a case. So I think that you are right, that the extent to which those issues are being addressed is far from satisfactory. Certainly women in the ANC who would attest to that. We completely agree with that. But I also think that there's a commitment, and because that is what happened, we can't give up the fight. We have to keep on standing up, we have to keep on raising the issues, and we have to do it where we are. For example, as general manager of the ANC, I must make sure that we have a sexual harassment policy and enforce it. I'm in a position of responsibility, which means that if something happens on my watch, at the end of the day, I can't blame the former general manager that was a man. I'm in the position now. So I think that it's not satisfactory. We're far from being a feminist organization, but I think that there is a strong commitment from women in the party and in the organization to fight, to make sure that we move towards a genuinely non-sexist society where if someone is accused of the kind of things that, of the examples that you mentioned, that there is swift action and there's action taken that is appropriate towards the offense.
I hear you. I do, Phoebe, but I think what I'm struggling with, and I'm struggling just as Lebora Mafoko from Manziville, is what then comes out when those incidents come. So I want to believe strongly what you are saying, that women within the ANC are fighting it, but I'm not seeing it. You know, the response after Manana was, well, there's others who've done worse. That was the public response. And that is why I use those examples to say, why must I trust you? Yeah. And I've got a lot of respect for what you are saying. And it sounds very rational and sensible. But when I'm sitting, looking at it, in a country where gender-based violence is such a norm, and I look at you as the leading party, you know, I get confused. So I hear you, and I want to believe you. So I guess I'm asking you to help me believe you.
I mean, I think that my response to the question about the what you said is that people's response was there were others. I mean, two wrongs don't make it right. It never makes it right. Because you didn't act against X, it doesn't mean that you have to then not act against Y, because they did the same thing, and X get away from that. I suppose the response to that is that we're not there yet in terms of making sure that as an organization we act decisively against incidences of violence against women in the party. One of the things that we, for example, debated when we discussed our list process for selecting candidates is what are the criteria. So there's the obvious IEC criteria that you need to ensure that somebody mustn't have a criminal record, that they mustn't be involved in corruption, etc., etc. And one of the things that we fought for is that they should also not be involved in any gender-based violence. And that was the first time that we had that provision within our list process to be able to say that we cannot have people on our list representing the ANC and the public that has been involved in any of these type of cases, whether it is domestic abuse, whether it's violence against children, whether it's rape, and those kind of gender-based violence. So I think that it's I mean, certainly I'm not satisfied that we're moving at a faster pace. The majority of women in the ANC are not satisfied that we're moving at a faster pace. But I do think that there is a push, and certainly feminists in the ANC are very committed towards making sure that we hold men accountable.
Okay, thank you. TA? Why should women trust you?
Thank you very much. I think here's the first part. The more women we can get into the DA leadership, the better. Because one of the things we do is we have constitutions. We've now upgraded our sexual harassment policy. We've now got a phenomenal lady, Dr. Noma Frank Mbambo, leading the DA Women's Network. So when we looked at our sexual harassment policy, it was not adequate. So the first thing is to say, how do we up our game so that we are fighting for ourselves as women? And now that we've got more women coming through the ranks, we evaluated it, and our sexual harassment policy is now being passed. So, for example, a couple of years ago, there was a sexual harassment case against an MP, and a lot of women felt that he had gotten a slap on the wrist from the FLC, which is our disciplinary committee. The good thing about getting more women into position of leadership, such as myself, is when FLC has made a ruling and we feel it's a slap on the wrist for the person, we can now say the sanction is too light. We want to see bigger things. We want to see something. In fact, maybe this person should even lose their membership because this person does not represent the values of the party as we joined it. So the main thing is also not sweeping things under the carpet, which is something we've always said. We will never sweep something under the carpet. If it comes out, we'll have a press conference and tell South Africa what we found and deal with it. So those are the things that we are doing to try and get people to trust us more as an organization by saying, whether it's corruption, whether it's sexual harassment, whether it's attacks on women, we should be open and let people know what's going on in the DA. Because sweeping under the carpet does that very thing of saying, why should we even bother trusting you because you hide the dirty things, your dirty laundry you're hiding. But if you expose it, then you're actually diffusing it and say, this is what we're doing.
All right. Mandisa.
Thanks. So our women policy is not comprehensively developed as yet, simply because EFF is 5 years old. Yeah? Not because we don't value the issues of women. If we didn't value the issues of women, we wouldn't have tried to be on par with parties that have been around for over 100 years. Both of them are more than 100 years old. We did that. We pushed ourselves to demand that our lists are 50-50 in the party, and they are. We also pushed for a sexual harassment policy in our code of conduct for specifically public representatives, but that needs to be expanded from the EFF into the broader membership base. We do push, even in our leadership structures, of course, that there must be 50-50. Where we have a weakness, we don't demand that membership must be 50-50, which has been one of the weaknesses that we've had. But we are moving towards that direction. To say the general membership, when we say membership, we're not talking voters and supporters, those who are card-carrying members. We don't have a clause that says general membership must be minimum 50-50, but we have a clause that says leadership must be minimum 50-50. So there's a disjuncture there, and we're going to correct it. We're 5 years old. There are many things that we are perfecting and that we are improving. But in terms of our response, the case that you mentioned in the Northwest, there has been a disciplinary process that was followed. That the organization nationally may not have communicated it, I'm not sure. I'm responsible for Gauteng province. I do push for a lot of gender issues outside of my scope, by the way. I'm very unpopular in the EFF for that. We have a PR councillor who raped a child of the EFF. You don't know about it because it didn't get to the media. It didn't get to the media because we expelled him very quickly while he was in jail already, and then we stepped in to offer assistance to the family because we can't control the behavior, the rotten behavior of men. They continue to behave like this. The only thing that's going to stop them, like I said, is very strong deterrence, and that's where I feel us women need to step in. Yes, we need to talk about the pain and all of that, but we need to step in on the action-oriented things that need to be done. We also do a very deliberate thing. Everything we do, we start with females in the EFF, even in our meetings. When men become aggressive in our meetings, we stand up and we tell them, just tone down, because majority women, by the way, are very scared of men. It's rare that you find women, I think in your circles you might think it's common because you operate in the gender activism space. But if you speak to the average woman in South Africa, average black woman in South Africa, they're very scared of men. Women are scared to stand up and talk when they are men. Women are even scared to contest men. Ask the ANC, they're 100 and how many years old? None of them contest men. The last person to contest a man in the ANC was Mam Winnie Mandela, and she had to pull back from stage because of the games that these men were playing and the women who were joining those men. So there are very few women who will contest men. openly contest them without any fear or favor, without even money, right? So the hypocrisy with which we contest what the political parties are doing or not doing is very strong in society, because we are pushing, trust me, there are many, many things. Like I said, we need to formalize our gender policy. We have not done that as yet, but we do it in direct ways. So like I indicated already earlier. But the biggest thing that I didn't respond to earlier in terms of the feminist approach, by the way, a feminist is not only a female. I thought maybe I should also put that on record, because I might not be a feminist, but my feminist struggle started as a result of the work my father was doing as a child and how he molded me into understanding why it's important to fight the state of poverty that black women are enduring. If we don't nationalize, we don't industrialize, we don't take back our land, women are under the capitalist system. Black women are going to perpetually be subjected to this patriarchal abuse by men. Because remember, you can put all the laws in place. You can make the police and the NPA and the courts and everybody around them work at supersonic speed and be efficient. But for as long as we remain poor economically, we'll permanently be subjected to abuse. So we are saying ours is a simple one. Once we get the land issue to be sorted out so that women have got secure access to their land, yeah? Abancengi indoda yakazibani, abancengi ubaba kazibani, abalwi amongst themselves in the family over the family home in Duplu Phase 4 when the parents died. Because the reason they end up fighting for those homes is because they've got nowhere outside to go to. So once we can deal with this land issue and distribute, by the way, we have been very clear on that. Our first distribution is going to be to black women who are homeless, who are landless, who have got C4 forms, who are in tribal traditional authorities that are subjected to very patriarchal rules. And we've been very clear about that, if you remember, during the public participation hearings into the land expropriation without compensation process run by Parliament. So if you don't do those basic things, it's fine. You're going to say that, no, we have a policy about this, that, to empower women, like the ANC does, broad-based economic empowerment, where they give 26% to black people, and black people are the majority. It's incomprehensible. But they don't even state how many must go to black women. It's just some wishy-washy story. We are very clear. When land comes, we need black women to get the land first. Because let me tell you, when you have your own piece of land, it doesn't matter how poor you are. You're not paying rent for it. You're not bonding. You're not paying some Van Staden. You're not begging Van Staden to live on the edge of his farm, like it happens in farms here in Gauteng. You are going to be confident, number one. You're going to make your own food. Let's say you don't have a job. You're not going to starve. Yeah. And you're going to do many, many things to make that home comfortable, yours, and even for your children. And you'll have a greater sense of confidence as a human being. So all the other policies that come will depend primarily on that one.
Okay, thank you so much. I'm going to now open it up to everybody in the room to ask questions. And then my last question to my panelists is, why should women vote for your respective parties? But let us hear from the people here. And as I said, please ask in any language you feel like. Can we keep our questions short and precise so that we get as many diverse questions as possible? And introduce yourselves and where you come from. Over to you, ma'am. Yeah,
Hi, my name is Kanyisa Boy. I come from an organization called Activate Change Drivers. It's a network of young people all over South Africa. So you are looking at the people who will be voting for you next year. I just wanted to quickly, so that I keep it short, let me read it. Ma'am, EFF. As a person who's interested in equality, I think that you need to take some interest in the politics and vulnerability of women in all their diversities. I think that your intentions come across as good, but your sessions are very violent. When you speak about people in the LGBTIQ community, you speak as if you speak to people outside of this room and they're inside this room. And violence affects them just as much, if not worse, than cis women. Secondly, I'd like to speak to the DA to say, perhaps you need to sit with your own discomfort. when it comes to gender. Your sessions are very outside of this room, but I think that as a person in a political space, you have experienced violence, even if it's not physical, in terms of politics. And I think that there's a disconnect in your responses because you seem to take it outside of the room, outside of the South African policies, and you talk about society as if it's not in this room. So those are my comments.
Can we get 3 and then maybe get the panelists to respond?
My name is Matsilo Motsei. My question is very short. Is it possible for all your parties to launch a feminist voter education as part of your manifestos next year?
Thank you. I'm going to take 2 more because others were comments. And if we can have one from this side, please. Yeah, no, that's fine. You can go ahead and then we'll come this side.
Okay, Dumalang, ke Mopedi Ntsobisa from Qwaqwa, EU coalition member as well as vice member. My first question is ho mme wa TA. As you said, hore ngwana moshemane ha o mo qala ho mo wa hae, o kgona hore a utlwe bohloko.
Okay,
But-
speak into the mic. You can speak speak Sesotho ngwana mme empa bua
Okay.
tjena, yeah.
As you said, hore ngwana moshemane ha o mo qala ka mo wa hae, o utlwa bohloko. But why every day re thola hore each and every 8 hours ho bolawa motho wa mme in South Africa? And then why re tlametse hore each and every day re hlekefetswa, re sa kgone hore re tsamaye re apere fela ntho tse re batlang hore re di apare. E re ha re tsamaya re apere di-short, be ba re jwetsa the way re rekisa mmele ka teng, or the way re batlang hore re rape ka teng. And then the second question is ho mme wa EFF. If mama o bolela hore maponesa e tlametse be bona ba blamewang, athe policy setwa kae in the first place? Because I think hore
What was the
maponesa
question, mme? O re athe eng?
policy ya maponesa hore a etse mosebetsi tswa kae.
All right, okay.
Yes. Because I believe hore e tswa ho government hore ba nke any lead. I thank you.
Thank you. Let's come this side and then re tla tla ho mme Mane. Can we come this side?
Thank you very much. My hand, I think, was the.
Oh,
sorry.
okay. Yeah.
Sorry.
The mic has become democratic.
Yes. I'll make
Go
sure
ahead,
that I'll be short.
Yeah, go ahead.
Yeah. Thanks so much for sharing your insights around the central question at hand. Just a quick one to our colleague from the DA. Apparently, you are the only woman in the current structure, as you have shared with us. What makes you tick? Perhaps that's the question. Of all the other women within the movement, I think it's something of interest. And also, what have been your responses in as far as the Patricia de Lille's case as a woman, talking of the pull hair down syndrome, which you have actually alluded to earlier on? What have been your responses in as far as supporting, perhaps? I'm not really support. I'm not going to lead you. In as far as Patricia de Lille's case that has been unfolding in the media of late. And also to my comrade from EFF, I think I really appreciate your position, the policy positions of the EFF when it comes to economic emancipation and empowerment of women from a feminist perspective. But at the same time, I'm a bit worried as to, don't you think this is the best place for you to really unfold your feminist policies, because this is the best space? Or are you still waiting for these patriarchs to do it on our behalf? Because I think it will be really interesting to get to understand. Otherwise, we'll find them leaked very soon and you will regret why you didn't share with us in the first place. So I think for now, let me just be...
Okay.
Thanks.
All right. Yeah, so what I'm going to do now, I can see a lot of people have hands up and the mic became democratic. That section has had a great share of questions. I'm going to ask the panel to respond, and then we're going to come to this section, and we're going to take hands in this section, and then we're going to come to this section, and then there's a section of 2 that side. So we're going to take the minority section also. So we're going to move section by section. Yeah, if that is fair. Can I ask the panel to respond?
Okay, I think that some of the questions are comments. Let me just say that I think that, I mean, the question was posed towards the EFF about whether women feel comfortable in violent situations. They don't. And I think that is why we need to make our politics spaces where women feel safe. And that is why in parties we need to address issues of how we conduct ourselves, how we address issues, etc. My colleague from the DA earlier made the point that women should put themselves forward. And the reality is that in a patriarchal society, we have to go the extra mile to make it possible for women to put up their hands. Because if we're going to, I mean, we have circumstances where you have a branch meeting of 90% women and the 10% men get elected. Unless you consciously say, actually, we have to bring the women. You can stand and we encourage you to stand and we actually volunteer you to stand. So I think that for political parties, but also for all organizations across the board, we have to be conscious about involving women and getting women to put up their hands and to be put forward. And I think that creating spaces and safe spaces for that. On the question of LGBTQI, I mean, I think that the ANC track record speaks for itself. We are one of the first constitutions in the world, and we fought for that recognized non-discrimination based on sexual orientation. That if one look at issues with regards to the right to marriage, the right to adopt children, we are way ahead of many countries in the world, in fact, in the top 10 in the world, towards that. But I think that there are also other issues, and in the same way as with regards to gender-based violence and patriarchy, I think that sexual orientation is also something that we need to speak openly about. We need to educate our children that it's fine that you have different types of families, in the same way that you have women-headed family, you have families that's headed by grandparents, you can also have families headed by 2 women or by 2 men, etc., and make that normal so that you don't find that by the time that they reach the age of teens and they're confronted with this thing, they feel, they can't talk to the parents, etc., etc. So I think that as a society, we need to be open about these issues. The question about a feminist voter education, I completely agree with you. I think that what we need to do is that we need to reach out to women, but we also need to reach out to young people across the board, men and women. Because if one look at the level of registration amongst young people, they are the majority of the unregistered. I think that in fact women are more likely to register and they're more likely to vote. They're the ones that go and stand in the queues, even if it's a long queue, and they go and vote. Older women. But I think that we need to do that. In addition to that, I think that a feminist voter education is also not just to encourage people to vote and register and go out to the polls. It's also to question their politicians about what's in your manifesto. What does it mean for women? And particularly both your men as well as your female politicians and public representatives, to ask the questions, what is your agenda for women? What is your agenda for girls? And I think that that's part of a feminist voter education. Yeah.
Thank you very much. There's a couple of questions that came through me. Some of them is questions, is comments. I want to respond to the lady who said, my responses was like, I'm not in the room. I'm not sure how that comes across. If it is my posture or position I hold, I'm apologizing because it's not how I choose to be. Anyway, but let me respond to the question on multi-party feminist platforms. In our legislature, there's a multi-party women's caucus. And there are times when, to be honest, women actually let their guards down and they sit in the multi-party forum and discuss women's issues. The challenge, though, which I think it needs to be augmented, is how you move those issues that are discussed out of the multi-party caucus into the legislature so that men get to learn to respect women in the legislatures. That's where there's a disjoint. So that's what we need to work on. And I think we need to own it as female leaders here, that there is a disjoint. And I think that also then goes into the broader society. If I even take it further, some of the things, when you look at the Dross rape, I attended the court case. It was not about ANC or EFF. It was a child and parents whose child has been raped. As much as we were there representing different organizations, we were all supporting the family and the victim. So those are more conversations that need to happen. I think that will also build a congenial society for South Africa. But there's so much work that needs to be done in that space. And we need to own it as leaders and say, a lot of work has to happen. If I can answer Ausika Sesotho, because ke Mosotho le nna. O no re ha ke bua ka ngwana moshemane, ke hodisa bana ba bashemane. Ke le mme, ke le single mother. Ntho ya pele e qala lapeng. Ngwana ka wa moshemane ke ba bararo kaofela ha bona ke bashanyana. Ntho ya pele ho nna ke hore ngwana ka wa moshemane a tsebe hore ke le mme le nna ke na le ditokelo tsa ka ke le motswadi. A ithute ho hlompha mosadi ka ho qala ka ho hlompha nna ke le mmae wa bona. Then ha ya ka ntle setjhabeng o hlompha le basadi ba bang. So ke tsona ntho tseo re le basadi batho ba bo mme re hodisa bana ba bashemane re tlamehang ho qala ho di sheba hore hodisa ngwana hao wa moshemane ho hosane e ska ba ngwana a tla beta. Hodisa ngwana hao wa moshemane hore a hlomphe basadi ka nako tsohle. Hore na mosadi wa apere jwang ha apara jwang ha ena taba, but mme a ka ba mme a fihla hae a pheha. Ke etsetse mohlala moshemane wa ka o na le 14 ka sonta ke yena a phehang ka hobane o tlameha ho ithuta hore hosane o ya ka ntle mme wa hae ha tsamaye le yena. Ke yena re phehelang re le lelapa. The other question was what makes me tick? What makes me tick? Ha ke lwanela ditokolo ditshwanelo tsa batho. For example, ha ke tsamaya in the streets, ke fumana mme a dutse a hlokometse ke ngwana moshanyana. If I give an example, Thembisa nkile ka fumana nkgono a hlokometse ke ngwana moshanyana. Nkgono maoto ke dikutu, ha kgone ho iketsetsa anything. Mora hae wa moshemane, setloholo sa moshemane ha se kgone le ho fumana mosebetsi hobane o tlameha ho hlokomela nkgono. Le ha ya shopong o tlameha a ye Shoprite a reke ka pele within 2 hours a kgutlo bana mohlomong hloka ho thusa nkgono hore a lo ithusa. Ha ke kgona ho kenya letsoho nthong tse jwalo ke bona hore ba fumana thuso hore abuti a kgone hore le yena a tswele ka ntle lo batla mosebetsi. Ntho tse jwalo ke tsona tse nkgotsofatsang bophelong hore ke ntlafatsa maphelo a ma South Africa. And then I'm going to answer the issue of Medilo. It's very sad when you see a woman being victimized. However, in the same breath, we need to be realistic. There are criminal charges that are possibly coming on that case. So for me, I don't want to see a woman being victimized, but at the same time, I cannot condone corruption. Because then when you steal, corruption actually steals from the poor and then enriches other people. It's not right. We cannot be doing that. If you saw the Bowman-Filman report, for example, there's 45 million under Mayor Patricia de Lille's watch that just disappeared out of the coffers of Cape Town. That's corruption. 45 million in Cape Town could have done a lot for people from Langa, Nyanga, Khayelitsha to improve their lives. So I can't turn a blind eye just because it is a woman. And that was part of the agreements. Mayor Patricia has resigned. If the city chooses to put on the corruption charges against her, lay criminal charges, it has nothing to do with the DA. We need to let the law take its course. And one of the things we have, moving on to other things, is one of the policies we have in the DA is we believe no woman should be left behind. Which means, for example, if I look at myself, when I mentioned that few women put themselves forward to be part of Helen's cabinet, as a leader, I mentor 10 women within the party. It's very difficult to mentor so many women and give them quality of mentoring. But by mentoring, you also teach a woman to say, this is what is expected of you to be a leader, so that there's a saying in the DA, we call it fit for purpose. When you mentor those 10 people, today I can also point up and say, this one is today a counselor because I encourage them and I do my work with them so they can see what it means to be a female leader in politics. so that they can tomorrow put their name forward. Thank you very much. And I think more of us need to do those kind of mentoring. Sometimes it's in the family, and a lot of it is within the DA structures nationally, where I have 10 women that I mentor, some officially and some unofficially.
Thanks. I find it very tragic that my colleague is speaking the way she is about a fellow woman leader who just so happens to be a veteran to many of us, yeah? If, and I want to deal with it very quickly because that's part of that women, I don't know what women do to each other. In the black world, we call it black on black violence. I don't know if you can call it woman on woman violence, but she's saying that so much money disappeared out of the coffers of Cape Town. I don't know, I don't care, right? Because I'm not in Cape Town and I'm not in the DA, but if money disappears, there must be an investigation, someone must be found guilty before I can say this person is corrupt. And I'm not defending Patricia de Lille, it's not my business. I'm just saying be careful of making allegations that might end you up in court if you have to go and prove them. The session that is violent against LGBTI, I'm assuming, is based on a misinterpretation of something I said earlier. If it was perceived as violent, I apologize unreservedly. On the 17th of September, which is Saturday, the EFF will be hosting a consultative meeting at the University of Witwatersrand with the LGBTQI sector. 17th, this coming Saturday, yeah. So maybe I'm announcing it prematurely, I apologize again, but I think it will move around in the circles, associations, and if it's wrong for me to say organizations that organize the LGBTI sector, because I never know the politically correct term, I always get beaten up for it. But invitations should be coming through various sectors, some LGBTQI, some not LGBTQI, but the communication will come through. Let's come to the issue of launching a feminist voter registration campaign. I'm assuming that I understand what that meant. I'm just going to assume because I'm not sure if I understood exactly what it meant. The issue is that the entire voter education process in South Africa is not, it will never be satisfied by political parties accurately or correctly. For the simple reason that political parties, well, let me speak for the small political parties that I knew. I can't speak for the ones that have been around a long time. Don't have enough financial resources. You might have the human resources to go out and do voter education for every sector, elderly persons, young people who are coming of age, who are now eligible to vote and don't understand, what the process is and also why they should vote. The critical part of it, whether it's for the feminist agenda, there isn't enough feminist education, whether it's on voter education or it's just through the mainstream education system of the country at a primary level as well as at a secondary level. You would know that in the UK, for instance, they already are introducing anti-sexism, not necessarily feminist, but anti-sexism education content in their curriculum from, is it called grade R? I've got a child who's very grown, so I forget some of them, but from early childhood development level, yeah? To teach children how to play with each other and not be sexist at the same time towards each other, especially, of course, to encourage or rather discourage sexism towards females, yeah, and girl children. So, for instance, South Africa should be doing things like that. I'm not going to tell you about the EFF manifesto, so I apologize. And there's no patriarch in the EFF that's going to be unveiling the manifesto. I like to believe that all our leadership gets workshopped about the sensitivities. It's also not fair on men, by the way. I don't defend men. I'm accused as a male basher most of the time. But it's also not fair on men for us to define all of them as patriarchs and sexists, yeah? The problem is pervasive in society. The problem in society is pervasive. Patriarchy is pervasive, but it's not possible for us to say each and every man necessarily is a patriarch, and I stick to that. But as a parting shot, I want to emphasize the fact that the EFF manifesto next year, because we were criticized in 2016 for not saying anything in our manifesto specifically about women and the persons from the LGBTI sector or LGBTQI sector. And that issue will be addressed in our next manifesto. I cannot speak on behalf of other political parties, but I can guarantee you that for the EFF, it's something that will be corrected. And when our manifesto, and by the way, it was already, it's just that we made an assumption that when we said the People's Manifesto, we assumed that everybody understood that when we say people, we encompass everybody. Not that other political parties said women, adequately, but I'm responding to the issue that was raised with us in 2016 after the elections. Thank you.
Thank you very much. I'm going to come to this section now. Ma'am, maybe you must jump this side so that I'm not seen to be putting forward. I mean, there's a lot of issues. I just want to recognize that I could hear the reaction from some of the comments, and maybe some of them in closing and in summary we'll come back to. But let's get the questions here. Short, precise, and then we will move here, and then we will also give the parties to respond.
Thank you very much. My name is Nkeletzen Tsatsane, and I'm a member of National Steering Committee for the Total Shutdown. And my first comment is to me over here. We appreciate the history lesson. We are very aware of Bomme Charlotte Matleke. That is exactly why we are here and we're doing what we're doing. So can we please be respected when you deal with issues, when you answer questions, you refer to cases that we're talking about today and what it is that has been done today, not what was done in the past. That we already know. And then my question is, there is a declaration that is out that came from the Gender Summit. And I would like to know, as the leadership of the parties you represent, have you engaged in it? And what are your thoughts, and how do you intend on ensuring that the demands are met? Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Hi everyone, my name is Ali Channon and I'm here from Chikalulu Social Investments. And I would really like to ask the panelists to reflect critically on the gendered implications of some of your party's non-gender specific policies and practices. And the reason that I'm asking that is because I don't think that we can set aside our ideologies without completely abandoning an intersectional lens. Yeah. We have to understand that gender is part of everything. Yeah. And I mean, just for example, how could a party with anti-poor policies aspire to be a feminist party? Yeah. Or how could a government that's hostile to immigrants aspire to be a feminist government?
Thank you.
Dumelang le kae? Kitumelo from Black Women Caucus. I just have maybe it's a comment or question you'll help me out for every one of you, our beautiful planets. So my question is, since we're moving towards, ANC has announced that it's going to be scrapping out life orientation in schools and putting in history as a compulsory subject for the higher education sector, that is from maybe grade 10, 11, 12, I think, or from grade 8, FET phase. So I just want to know what values will you be instilling there? Because there's a quote that says history is a recording of just men who did things. And I just want to know, I want us women to be in the forefront. I don't want our voices to be, what's the word? Silenced. Yes, I want to know, so what's your stance on that as EFF, as DA, and as ANC? Yes, thank you. Next. Okay.
Thank you.
Hi everyone, my name is Lerato from Wits Radio Academy. I just want to ask, and it's a continuing question that I'm struggling with. Oslebo, I want you to put your Soul City hat on, because donor funding for me is an issue, especially when it comes to projects like this and our relationships being different NGOs and working in silos, and how hard it is for us to work in partnership, because we're here all of us, and then the next best thing, you're not Yet Uhuru has faded and no one is saying anything, it's just like disappeared. Are we having a valuable conversation? One, do we have a guarantee that if Soul City at any given point in time needs assistance from us, it's different NGOs, we are involved in keeping the project alive, because projects come up and die. Are we also concerned with keeping organizations like the Total Shutdown available and working as hard as it has been able to do that, but also are we having a more important conversation, and this is for the people from the political parties, are we having a really important conversation around donor funding and ensuring that donors understand, right? I was at a financial journalism thing over the weekend, and I was told that donors don't necessarily need to come, but donors also need to clear their conscience. That's why they're here, right? So how are we having a valuable conversation around donor funding to ensure that, one, we don't work in silos, two, when we need help, we can pull hands together and remove the iconization of people and some people being certain icons within a certain kind of movement? Are we ensuring that that conversation will move to all other levels? Because government is accepting funding, but people in rural areas are not able to use it because of the mechanisms that have been put in place to account for absolutely every single thing. Like, for instance, the Rise Clubs. So we're having a valuable conversation. For me, that's my point of contention, because we create media without necessarily having the restrictions to be able to do M&E, which is monitoring and evaluation. But when you come to the donor funding world, you kind of have to switch yourself and fit yourself in what the donor wants. Are we pushing back hard enough? Is there enough movement around that? Because I feel like there isn't. And people are not mentioning this as a very important part of the reason why the work we start dies.
Yeah, thank you very much. Is this all from this side? Can we get the responses from the panelists? Then we'll move this side.
Okay, let me start with a question. I apologize if it came across that I am only referring to history, because I'm a strong believer, and that's how I grew up in learning from the Black consciousness generation, that you're nothing without your roots and an understanding of the roots. And as a historian, it's always important for me to look at how do you draw back and learn from others in the past in addressing problems of today. So I apologize if it offended you. The question about the Gender Summit Declaration, government has 6 months, has been given 6 months by the summit to come up with a plan of action. One of the things that we're doing as, and I always say the ANC NGO, is to push government to make sure that it start that process and that we try and finish it before the 6 months. I mean, 6 months is the ultimate, but for example, in 6 months' time, you will have the budget. So it must be incorporated in the State of the Nation address, and it must be incorporated in the budget. You can't announce the plan of action afterwards and say, sorry, but the budget has already gone past. So we're pushing for that, but also looking at how do we then incorporate it in other aspects of our work, and including our manifesto, for example. The second question about non-gender specific policies, I completely agree with you. Because often we tend to ghettoize issues of women in the women's ministry or the women's machinery, etc., and we don't look at, if you talk about industrial policy, what does it mean for women? If you talk about housing, what does it mean for women? If you talk about transport, if you talk about infrastructure development, and that's my understanding of what a feminist government is about, to be able to make sure that you have policies in all of its ramifications that you're able to then ask that question, what does it mean for women, what does it mean for children? And I think that it's across the board, it's not just in specific areas. The question about immigrants, I think that you're absolutely right, because if one look at and we should have a frank conversation as a continent. I was in Addis Ababa at the African Union Commission at the time of 2008 xenophobic violence. And the sense of betrayal from people who participated in the anti-apartheid struggle, who participated and who took exiles in, who took in students, who gave passports to South Africans who couldn't come back, and say, but what's happening? Why? And I think that when we talk about having conversations about what's happening in our society, I think that this is one of the issues. I don't necessarily believe that the ANC is anti-immigrant, but I think that there are certain policies of government and the way that they are implemented that contribute towards a sense of exclusion and putting poor people against poor people. And your immigrants that come here are mainly economic migrants, and you then put them up against poor communities. So we need to address that and look at how do we tackle the problem. And South Africa, I mean, we're not necessarily the only country that's facing this problem. There was an article about 2-3 weeks ago about people from Benin in Nigeria that large scale were chased out of the country, who participated in economic activities, and all of a sudden people felt, no, we don't want them here anymore. So it's a question that we need to confront as a continent, as a country, because the majority of migration is not to Europe, it's within our region. So it's in Southern Africa, it's in West Africa, it's across the continent. So it's an issue that we need to address. Just the final issue that I wanted to talk about is this question of donor funding. And I completely agree with you that we need to have the conversation, but we can't do the conversation as we're too weak if we do it as one NGO or as one project. We have to stand together and say that these conditionalities is not acceptable, and if one say it, then you may not make an impact and they say we can go elsewhere. But if the civil society and NGOs come together, it is a way of strengthening our voices to be able to say to donors. But I also always say that donors, I mean, including our wonderful partners in Canada and other places, reflect their foreign policy. So if their foreign policy priority tomorrow is that we don't want anything to do with distributing condoms, and I'm now Trump and neoconservatives, then that's what the donor funding is going to be attached to. So we need to look at how do we build sustainability so that donor funding doesn't become our projects are so reliant on them. And I don't have an answer to it. I think it's an issue that we've struggled with for the last 35 years about how do we make sure that we build sustainable NGOs. But I think that the point that the sister raised, that we must speak up. If we think that not yet Uhuru is an important project, if you run into problems, talk to us. So that as individuals, as organizations, as our networks, we are able to assist. Because it's very important that we build sustainable institutions, and not just in government, but particularly in civil society.
Thank you very much. Just in terms of the declaration from the Gender Summit, what the DA has done is tasked the DA Women's Network to create a task team that is looking at everything to make sure the implementation does happen. So that's kind of what our role is as an opposition party. And obviously we're also looking at where there's more things that could be done, more than what just came out of the Gender Summit. In terms of hostility to immigrants, I think one of the things we need to talk about is our government has let us down, because you can't be in a country where people are not documented, and Home Affairs rejects people, then people are literally victimized, then they try and get papers the right way, but they're not given the service, whether it's as asylum seekers or whether as refugee seekers, because our refugee offices are dysfunctional here in the country. And some of them were actually not even operational until this year, where the issue of immigration became quite heated. But the reality is, at the same time, you need to look at how do you then secure your borders to make sure that people that come in, you get the right skill sets that you need to come into the border. If it's economic migration, how do you make sure that people are documented? You can't be going to Tembisa Hospital and a woman is giving birth and nobody knows who she is, because she was into Maraba study and was not able to get documentation. So I think some of those things need to be addressed to make sure that immigration is legalized for everybody, so people don't end up feeling like illegal immigrants in South Africa. And I don't want to add, I do to an extent agree with Mephibi in terms of her response to making sure we don't put poor people against each other in terms of looking for economic opportunities in South Africa. In terms of scrapping of life orientation, I want to say where we stand is the challenges. We do need to know about history. I know when I was at UCT, I studied a course called Women in the Modern History, and it's such a beautiful course, but so many people don't even know about it. It talks about how People like my grandmother were subsistence farmers and contributed to the economy of South Africa. Nobody talks about those causes today, and we need to know those kind of histories because it is women's histories like that that need to be told. But we also need to balance the reality that life orientation is a crucial subject, especially when you're trying to get social cohesion going in South Africa. You cannot eradicate life orientation out of schools because then within the school system, how do we then bring social cohesion in? And then in terms of donor funding as an issue, I sit in social development as an MPL here in Gauteng. The challenges I see is government does projects called social cohesions. Why aren't not Yet Uhuru and them invited to come to those discussions? Because there's a lot of money that then goes out, but you're not sure about the impact. I've never seen conversations of this nature. It's more awareness, more like tick box exercises of we've created awareness, we went into a community, but where's the impact and what happens after government has left? And one of the things I've always said in my portfolio is the reality, it's NGOs and movements such as Not Yet Uhuru that actually do the work of government, because government cannot work in isolation. It has to actually bring NGOs together and movements such as this to actually get South Africa where it needs to be. Thank you very much.
Thanks. Let me go from the last question and come backwards. The issue of donor funding, you must raise those issues very unapologetically with the ANC government, nationally particularly, because majority donors, when they bring money to the country, they bring it through treasury, national treasury, not the provincial treasuries. The provinces then get it through what is called a conditional grant system, right? Now, where the problem lies, and I'll make an example with the crisis with the abortions that is currently underway, where government is not funding their own policy to make abortion facilities available to the public and accessible to women in the instances of unwanted pregnancies or pregnancies resulting from rape or whatever the situation is. Now, the crisis there is because government is not transparent. Majority NGOs don't know how much money donors globally, for instance, or even in Africa, or even private donors in South Africa that are giving, how much money those donors are giving to the state. And because all of that is clouded and shrouded in a veil of secrecy, NGOs don't know when they are getting, like you get old age homes or homes for the aged, you get children's homes, and you get various different types of NGOs who set up facilities for vulnerable persons, who apply to the Social Development Department. Now, we are not in government, so I'm just advising you in terms of the work we've done as an opposition party and what we've managed to unearth, where the problems are, problems that we will obviously unlock when we come in next year, where we'll be governing. Yes, we are going to be governing somewhere. I'm not sure why you're laughing. I hope you're laughing in celebration. We are going to be governing somewhere. I can't say where, but governing we will, yeah? Now, I'm raising this issue because I have experience with this frustration, where donors are approved, they apply to social development, they get their approval, but their approval is subject to all sorts of things. I mean, you know what happens internally in government. If you don't know this one, if you didn't sleep with that one, and all of that. So there's no transparency, but even worse with donor funds. So NGOs don't know when they get money from government, they don't know where that money is coming from. They don't know whether the money is from the fiscus, which means our tax revenues, or whether that money is coming from a donor, and they should. Let me tell you why. I'm making an example again with the abortion crisis, yeah, where we have so many illegal abortions and people selling drugs illegally there at Gandhi Square and other areas where women and young girls especially know where to get it because there's an underground thing that is happening and government is doing nothing about it. They're pretending like they don't know. So say, for instance, there's an NGO that wants to, a clinic, because a clinic can be an NGO, wants to access that money that is given by the Ford Foundation, yeah? Specifically for maternal health care or, any area around maternal health, yeah? The Ford Foundation, because it comes from America and they have this imperialist agenda, I'm talking now on the intersectionality issue, must not see things in isolation. She's absolutely right. The Ford Foundation and the Kellogg Foundation, because they are American, they are pushing the agenda of the Americans, specifically the North Americans, which is the USA, will then put conditions to government, which government doesn't share with NGOs when they apply. They'll say to them, this money can be used for maternal health care, right? But they won't say overtly, except abortions. But they will put so many other conditions there to say that maternal health care facility may not dispense this drug, that drug, and they are referring to the drugs that have to do with the abortion process, for instance. Are you with me? And the ANC government is fully aware of it, that those clauses are anti-abortion because America and its conservative leaders are anti-abortion. So she's right because those conditions come with those countries, but she's also not assisting us because they've been governing for 24 years. She can't take the posture that we take as a powerless 6% party. She must take the posture of a 62% party, yeah, and take requisite responsibility like a parent does in a household. So NGOs need to ask and demand more transparency and say, for the money I'm asking for, give me the government conditions overtly so that I know beforehand. But there's also another issue that makes NGOs, especially black-run NGOs and CBOs, yeah, a little bit that disadvantages our NGOs and CBOs. The lack of understanding of the taxation system. The fact that NGOs should be relying less on the state and more on private and activities to raise money for the issue of sustainability, because government can have a private sector and then decide, there could be emergency situations and then immediately they cut from the social budget. So to be sustainable, understand the taxation framework that South Africa is currently using. For instance, NGOs and CBOs, most of them, the black ones, yeah, are not educated about the fact that they should apply for tax exemption, yeah? They think once they have the registration with social development, everything is okay, and it's not. You need to register with both social development, you need to register with SARS for a normal tax number, plus you need to register for a tax exemption certificate within SARS, which is not automatic just because you have an NPO thing. So I'm just speaking to that discussion about donor funding because it's a very in-depth special discussion that must be had, but also the NGOs need greater education, especially the black ones operating in the townships, and they need more hand-holding from the state until they can run on their own. But also the state needs to be very open and honest with them about the conditions which government accepts. And by the way, Comrade Phoebe, you don't have to, as a government, accept those conditions, because accepting those conditions and accepting that funding is disadvantaging our people on the ground. Let me come to the issue of the gender declaration. Of course, we have not yet held a formal meeting as the EFF. We received the document. We are fully versed with it. But like I said, because of being a small party, sometimes when it's election time, you end up not prioritizing everything the way you should. So we first need to have a discussion internally in the EFF with the document, and then prioritize the things in the document that we think are a top priority, non-negotiable, so that we as the EFF can start pushing for those things across. We'll give directives to our PR councillors, however few they may be in every council, give directives to our MPLs, however few they may be, because we've got 2 in most provinces, except Gauteng, Limpopo, and Northwest, where we have 8, 6, and 5, yeah? And then we will obviously, the national leadership will give directives to the National Assembly, caucus of the EFF, to push some of those agenda EFF style, because we're not going to just oppose and all of that. We'll use our own unique way of doing things to push some of the things. I mean, we've been pushing for a lot of things in any event, but that's what we'll do, because that's what we can do at the moment. But also, we will consider the document for manifesto commitments that we need to make as part of the broader consultation that we are busy with now in different sectors and in society. And that document will help us a lot to fine-tune our manifesto positions so that we can make better commitments next year. Thank you.
Thank you very much. I was also asked about the whole funding issue and maybe to speak about
one of the 3 focus areas that Yet Uhuru will be focusing on is gender responsive budgeting. And I think the fact that we've not had gender responsive budgeting speaks to a lot of the problems that we have with funding that could go to many of the organizations that we are talking about, that were mentioned, including the total shutdown. We need to cost what our response is going to be and make sure that there are resources there. But I do agree with the comments that have been made about the state and its role in the agreements that are made. And I want to go back to the issue of abortion. We were asked with the Trump administration that came in, because when you apply for any American donor funding, you are then asked to sign what is called as the gag rule, which simply says you accept this money on the basis that you will not give any information on termination of pregnancy. You will not partner with organizations. And there's a number of advocacy groups that have called Soul City, and I'm sure they've called other organizations to say, what is Soul City saying about it? My response has been, Soul City should not be responding. So I think, Phoebe, I'm pushing back. That is actually not the role of NGOs to say, let's come together and push back. We will do that because we push back on a number of things. But for a country that has legalized termination of pregnancy, the mere fact that we have not had the government push back and say, hang on, this is what you are asking NGOs to sign, it is anti our laws, is anti-women. So in my opinion, the government, by not even speaking out, has taken a very anti-women stance. And therefore, the responsibility cannot rest on NGOs to basically push what government should be pushing. And there are, theories out there about why even in the escalating provision of illegal abortions, government has been silent. One of the suspicions being perhaps there is an anti-abortion sentiment within the ANC, and that is why it's being silent. So yes, we will do what we do as civil society organizations in our different formations, but it shouldn't be our struggle. And the fact that government is not doing anything is anti-women. I am being told that we are out of time. I am not sure what do I do with people with hands here, Khali, because I do not want to fight with people. I'm very happy if we are contracting anew in this process, that we will take these questions, but maybe not everybody responds to every question, and maybe every question is quite direct. But I would not want to be the one that says, we stop the conversation. I'm Ramafoko, father of the words. So when the words are flowing, I'm making my ancestors happy. So I'm not going to be that one. Go ahead.
Thank you very much. My name is Busisiwe Siabe. I'm with the Black Women Caucus. I'm curious about what the ANC is going to do with the ANC Women's League. The ANC Women's League are now hopping onto this feminist struggle that has now come out into the country, this popular rhetoric around feminism and caucusing around feminism. The ANC Women's League are the same people who wanted to ban Kwezi and were calling her a witch when she had essentially, pointed out that former President Jacob Zuma had raped her. So I'm particularly worried about the leaders within this women's caucus that you're speaking about, because even the feminists that you say are excited to get onto, programs around feminism are very problematic. And I'm speaking about the women's desk, specifically ANC's women's desk that has now just come up, because they themselves are also perpetuating violence and violence against women. And an example of that would be the Gender-Based Violence Summit. Secondly, to Umama Waku DA, I'm curious, what informs your feminist policy, right? The reason why I'm asking this is because you're a liberal, white, monopoly capitalist kind of organization. And I'm very curious as to the kind of feminism that informs, your policies. And the reason why I ask this is the kind of women that you essentially prosecute, your Delils, who's that woman that went to America to go study, that one? Lindiwe, are specifically black women or women of color, but the white women like your Helen Zillers do not essentially get reproached with regards to some of the sexist, some of the racist things that they say, and some of them that also perpetuate violence. So is your policy informed by the white classical feminism? Because if it is, Africa and South Africa is going through black radical feminism, which means to a large extent there's also a divorce. So I just want to understand that leadership of Mandis. I'm being very quick, I hope. Commissar, it's a pleasure to see you. Apart from that, the EFF, as far as I know, has a gender committee, gender equality committee that is about to be launched in the Northwest that will also train leadership on sensitivities on language, on your transgendered bodies, and the event that we'll be having on Saturday as well pertaining to that. What I'm curious about from your perspective is how is that also going to inform a lot of the footwork that must be done in communities that unfortunately are run by the ANC and the DA? How are we going to be able to get our programs around gender equality, around feminism, to those areas when we have a backlog of ANC and DA members causing havoc as usual? Thank you.
Okay. Greetings, everyone. My name is Mnyekolo Bakangshigwambani, and I'm a blog writer and contributor on this Not Yet Uhuru platform. I just want to piggyback on what Nkele spoke about with regards to the Gender Summit and the declarations that have come out. As part of the CSO collective representative as well, who organized under the banner of Total Shutdown, we had 5 key issues that we wanted to present at the summit. One of them being the decriminalization of sex work. And if you look at the declaration itself, one of the last points on the declaration also speaks to the decriminalization of sex work. But I want to ask you, panelists, what your position is on the decriminalization of sex work, if your political parties have a position on the decriminalization of sex work. Another one of the demands that came out from the CSO collective at the Gender Summit was with regards to granting parole to women who have killed their partners because of being subjected to intimate violence. I want to know, and there was a call to release Martha, which was basically a call to have the president pardon women who are serving life sentences because of having killed their spouses for long-term abusive relationships. Can I please hear what your position is on those 2 issues? Thank you.
Thank you very much. Was that, is there another one? Okay.
Oh, you moved. Okay, I will last 2 hands. I'm closing after you, ma'am.
Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Kitumeti Fatimata Mutlati. I'm from the Black Women Caucus. I don't necessarily have a question, but I think it's a comment. Black Women Caucus being an anti-GBV movement and one that also is non-partisan, I think now more than ever, and please, this is not to discredit the work that is done through our various political organizations, but I do think I'm at a point as a young Black woman in South Africa where I believe that liberation of women will not happen through our political organizations. It's very clear, and just listening to the language that is being used by the panelists, that issues, struggles that women, particularly Black women, are facing is not necessarily an issue of urgency. There's no urgency around the matter, but instead it is being reduced to political campaigning. And it's fine because that's how political organizations operate. But what I do want to urge the women in this room, right, is how do we envision power as women, right? Can our power only exist in political organizations? If so, I don't think that the current political organizations are the right vehicles in which Black women can attain power. So I really am calling for a more imaginative thinking around power, around how we are going to liberate ourselves, because I do think that we are the only people who can liberate ourselves. I also do believe that movements, and we've seen in the past 5 years that, listen here, social media has made life so much easier for several reasons, but it's also exposed a lot of the contradictions that exist in society, right? And I don't think I'm going to vote in 2019 because you guys are not taking my struggle seriously. And it's unfortunate that we sit here and we are listening to you guys campaign, because this is really what it is. You are sitting here and you're campaigning and you're selling us versions of your political party that you think will appeal to us, where really the political parties are built on the subjugation of Black women. political parties thrive on the silencing of black women. It's not that we don't want to emerge. It's not that we are unable to emerge. But the structure and the way our political organizations are formed or are run is based on our oppression. And I think that's something that we need to really engage with. And I mean, Lebo asked about it in the beginning to say, what does a feminist version of your political party look like? And to be quite frank, none of you envision that because I don't even think it's possible. But I mean, this is just me as a young black woman who could potentially be voting next year.
All right, thank you. Was that the last question? Last input? Okay, all right. Last.
Molweni nizawuthetha.
Thetha son.
I'm representing abafazi from the grassroots level. I'm also with Black Women's Caucus. I was given an opportunity to be there. However, Auslebu, potso ya ka ke ena ho bomme ba le bararo. Ke nahana hore ha o bua ka feminism, ba tlo kopana ba le bararo, ba bue ntho e le nngwe. Ska di total shutdown, haila organizer, the CBO, hobane rona re di CBO, and other institutions tse makeisheneng tsa kopana tsa etsa ntho e ntsweng ke bomme Mamaxeke. So rona ho tlo re representa basadi ba tshwanang le bagale. And then ANC le family ya hae DA le EFF ha ba re araba ke disappointed hore basadi bana ba bararo ha ba bontshe kopano. Re tlo ilwana jwang ntwa enana if ha re kopane re le basadi re a beshana re a criticizana. We need unity as women. Potso ya ka ke enana he bomme. The struggle of the women in the grassroots level. We have femicide. We have gender-based violence. We have kids being murdered and raped. And you have constituencies in those grassroots levels. Ke rata mo ba no highlightile case ya Dross. Itlo ba case ya Sherol. We have cases in the Val where I come from. Believe you me, I have 3 cases. I've never seen anyone on my picket. I've been doing pickets alone, my daughter and other 4 or 5 people. We have Lebu, who was murdered. She was trending on the social media, ETV and everything. Nobody knows today, Hore, the perpetrator's out on bail. Renali Palisa Mukhele, she was murdered brutally. The perpetrator is running out. Hariboni ANC, Hariboni DA, Hakiboni EFF, saying we want justice for that young woman. We have a woman who was murdered 2011. She was a mother, she was a domestic worker. She was raped and murdered at work. This woman had tola justice. I've been running like a headless chicken. Okay, fine, don't give me anything. We want support. We want you to come on board and say, we want justice for these women. It's high time we see you saying, we are going to fight as women. F you up, IFP, ANC, and whatever. We're going to unite as women. Let's self-introspection and say, what is it that we want as women of South Africa? Because it's us who are murdered every day. Cool.
Thank you. I'm going to ask my panelists to answer and wrap up in not more than 2 minutes each. My sense is a lot of what came out were comments and reflections, and maybe not all of them as questions. And I want to take this moment to just thank each and every person who stood up and contributed, whether it being a comment or a question. I think it has really enriched the conversation. But if I can just give all of you just maybe one thing you want to comment or respond to, but if each one of us will not be more than 2 minutes.
Okay, I think that the question about power for me is an important point that was raised, because the power are in government, it is in business, it is the powers that we have as individuals, it's the powers of political parties, it lies in social movements. And if we want to push forward the feminist agenda, we have to do it in all spaces. So we can't say that we will only do it in civil society and political parties can do their thing and we don't take what they do, because they matter, because they do play a role in relation as also opposition, or they play a role in relation to government. And this is why I think it's important that people should vote, and women should vote, that feminists should vote. I think that the Americans learned their lesson, because women didn't want to vote and they got Trump. And this is why women and young people came out in the Congress election, because they realized that unless they use their power, you're going to get what you don't want. So I think that we need to continue to have this conversation about how do we see power. There was a question about just the last point about the Women's League. I think that the questions that were raised about the Women's League now embracing a feminist agenda, you're absolutely right. The Women's League throughout the ages tend to focus on women fighting side by side. They've always been reluctant to say we are a feminist movement. I think that it's a sense of the power of the women's movement, and particularly young women in places like the Black Women's Caucus, in the Fees Must Fall movement, that it pushed an organization to be able to say that actually you can talk about the fact that you are a feminist movement. I think that society evolved and organizations evolved. The fact that the DA now has one female member on their council shouldn't let us say, if they're then pushing for 50-50, to then say, no, why are they doing this? We must embrace it and say, this is the way forward for all of us to go. Because at the end of the day, progressive ideas in society, we can't sit in our little corner and be progressive by ourselves. We need to fight for our ideas to be embraced by all of society. And I think that the feminist agenda is about making sure that all political parties adopt a feminist agenda, that we work together in civil society, but also that we recognize that power lies in different places, and how do we then make sure that we use power in the most effective ways.
Thank you very much. You asked about the DA and where we get our feminist policy. Look, the DA basically started with European liberalism. But when you operate within an African landscape, you need to operate within that context of where you operate. So that's how we've evolved our liberalism to fit into the African landscape. In fact, we do a lot of work with opposition parties which support liberalism throughout the continent. I mean, I'm sure you've heard of HH in Zambia. And those are some of how we evolve, because you cannot be stagnant. You need to move with the times. And then in terms of Mayor Patricia de Lille and Lindiwe, I think I've answered Mayor Patricia in an earlier response, so I don't want to go back there. But in terms of Lindiwe was offered the opportunity to go to Harvard. And as far as I know, she wanted to improve, she wanted to go to Harvard, and she took the opportunity. But what happens in politics, because you live in parliament, we can't leave a vacancy. It has to be filled by somebody else. And then in terms of the gender summit around the criminalization of sex work, that's something the DA is very strong about, because one of the things we say is if you decriminalize sex work, people have better access to healthcare and other support in terms of services. And then I think the issue of partners who've been killed by women of domestic violence, I think every case in that regard, we as women need to push for those cases to be reviewed, but you can't lump them all together, because each case has individual merits. So we think we must be looked at on their individual merits, but definitely where women fight, because for me, if you're fighting for your life as a woman, and I come out of an abusive relationship, so I guess to an extent I can talk about it from that space. Look at the circumstances that led to that woman killing the partner, because it could actually have been psychological self-defense which led to her killing her partner. And those are things that we need to say need to be reviewed on an individual case-by-case merit. And then in terms of the agency of women's issues, which I think you raised, my sister here, I think we can't always say everything is politics. because that means we box in certain things. One of the things that I advocate is we also need to encourage active citizenry. And when I see not yet Uhuru, it is so right on active citizenry. And government cannot do it alone. Politicians cannot do it alone. Sometimes I'm an active citizen, although I can never divorce myself from being a leader in the DA. But when it comes to women's issues, I also fight as an active citizen because I know I have a position of influence. But one of the things I want to say is, when we hear women, and I want to lump a further part of your response to, okay, ne waval. Hasina go tsohle re kgonang ho ya di-court casing, but ke dumellana le wena mo re nang le di-councillor ba tlameha hore ba bonahale di-court casing, ba bone hore re lla le basadi ba no ha bua di-court casing. But ho na le ntho ya bohlokwa e batho ba sa e hlokomeleng. Ha re le di-politician, ho na le mo re leng di-lawmaker, re tlameha re ye di-parlamenteng, di-portfoliong, re lo lwanela hore ho tjhentjhwe melao hore, for example, e nngwe ya dintho tse ne ke di bua qalong ko hore why ho sena a specialized court, like at 2010 ho nona le court e dilang le crime ho qetwe ka batho ba utsweditsweng. Ha re lwanele hore ho be le a gender specific court ka Department of Justice. Ha re se di legislature ke mang a lwanang mono no, so ho na le di roles tse fapaneng. And again ke a dumela hore ehlile re tlameha hore e seng draw se fela, ha ke be ka draw se fela, ho na le tse ding. For example, last year in November, ho na le ngwana 12 years ana rape ke ntate wa le Nigeria, Sunnyside, a mo keepile as a sex slave. I was there. But we try and re bone hore batho ba ya, but nako nngwe ha re tsebe hore di case di teng. No, ke batla ho bua nnete, di case di ngata. So nako nngwe ha o itse na o ikarola jwang, but nako nngwe ha re buisaneng re le bomme, le rona re kgone hore branching tsa rona tsa val nka deploya di-councillor ba nna ke re filwe ke tlameha ho thusa ho lwanela ditokelo tsa basadi parlamenteng, wa utlwisisa mme wa ka. So ke bofokodi ba rona, and re se ke ra bo swabela re phoso mo di etsaetseng, ha re tswelang pele re lokiseng, hobane neng ha ona mo re yang ha re sa shebe morao hore phoso e etsaetse, but ha re shebeng pele hore na re lokisa jwang for bokamoso. Ke a leboha morato.
Thanks. Refilo, you should have supported our motion for the specialized courts earlier this year when we presented it. So, that's fine. I think sometimes it's important for us to educate each other and also to criticize each other. We love each other when we criticize each other because then we grow. The issue of not seeing, political parties in each and every case, yeah? And each and every time the case goes, because we can speak in I. I'm not trained to speak like that. I'm from a mass movement culture. Even before the EFF, I think I was in the ANC. So the I talk, I'm sorry, it's a fashion that I'm not yet comfortable with. So we need to represent our organizations. And so the weakness which Mami raises about not seeing political parties in every case, especially the cases of children and females and other genders, is because we don't, sometimes as political parties, we want to be sensitive as well to families, because sometimes the families also push back a bit. There's a few cases I can mention where families pushed back and said, no, we don't want you to be too this and to that. But we do go as far as much as we possibly can. And there's a lot of cases in Gauteng where the EFF is gone. In the VAL, for instance, I know we were mostly obsessed recently with that over-VAL racism case. And of course, you are absolutely correct. We let the ball go on the issue of the gender cases. So what we will do is we will instruct our structures immediately. If your organization wants to get in contact with us, that's fine. If it doesn't want to, that's also okay. But what we will do is we'll activate our fighters to go to all the courts like we did in 2016 with police stations and check all the gender and children-related cases, and then see where they can speak to families and affected victims to see where they want the EFF support to be overt and not, because sometimes we go and then we get pushed back. And I'm not saying that happened in the VAL, I'm just saying it is a common thing and we have to be sensitive to it. If families say, take a back seat. We have no choice but to respect them. But we will definitely improve in the VAL, because I agree with you. We go to almost all cases that are high profile. We should go to all cases, especially in the magistrates court. There's a case in Protea Magistrates Court that we stepped in too late, and by the time we stepped in, the NPA and the judges had already messed up the case, where the child was accused of having a relationship with the person who molested her, and it wasn't even possible. The child was 10 years old. Nonetheless, I agree with her. We need to show more support where we can, and the EFF will improve everywhere around the province, not just in Sidibeng, wherever it can. We support the decriminalization of sex work for many reasons. Also because as the EFF, when we are governing, we want more tax revenues. So if sex work, and I'm making a joke, just to lighten it up a bit. So it's very wrong that sex work is not criminalized for many political reasons and many social reasons, we know. And also it's a dangerous space. And when it's not criminalized properly, decriminalized, decriminalized, it exposes women and men who are engaged in sex work to more danger. So that's the biggest reason. But more than anything, we want to increase tax revenues. So if we know how much work you're doing, how much money you're making, and if you reach that tax threshold, we can get more tax revenues. That's on a lighter note. I'm not sure why we take everything so, seriously, and we take such offense. But as the EFF, we definitely support the decriminalization of sex work. We do find it tragic, or not tragic, but we'll take responsibility as a new party, that there are women who feel they can't vote because they don't feel properly represented. It's a fact. In 2016 and 2014, the EFF was voted for by fewer women as compared to men. And that fact alone made us question ourselves as the EFF, because we did receive that statistic that it's a 40-60 split. It's not a secret. You can Google it and find it. Now, what was important for us was to find out why that was the case. And that's what we are engaged with now. As you know, in politics, you can't find solutions very quickly. Everything takes a little bit of time. But like I said earlier, I did indicate some of the things we've done internally to make sure that we boost and even force women participation, because if you don't force women, it's a reality, whether you like to hear it or not. Majority women don't want to get involved in debating and arguing and, anything that is competitive. That's majority. And our role now is to make sure that we bring women out, we force them to engage more in politics. But the last thing I wanted to say, which I omitted to add earlier on, Melebo, is that we will be pushing for African psychology as a subject, and part of that will be African feminism to be included in schools, whether through life orientation or as a standalone subject, depending on how much academic input we can get for the curriculum itself. But those are some of the things that we're going to be pushing for, precisely to accentuate the point that was made earlier, that you can't talk feminism alone. You have to isolate Afrofeminism from generic feminism for a simple reason of inequality. White women are way ahead of African females. So we can't spend our energy and the little bit of resources we have fighting for people who are already advantaged. The reality is that all citizens in South Africa are protected by the same laws. But unfortunately, not all can use those laws to their advantage. You need money to use those laws. And so the reason we want to push for African feminism as a subject, and not just feminism, is because it's part of the economic emancipation agenda in the long run. Thank you.
Thank you. You were very disciplined. You were very disciplined. And I think in fairness, maybe I should give you 30 seconds to address it.
The ANC's position on decriminalization of sex work is the same as the other parties, that we need to look at how do we protect women. But there's one other dimension which I think when we adopted the position 20 years ago, that's not as pervasive as it is today. And there's the question about human trafficking. So I think that as we have the debate about decriminalization of sex work, we also need to look at how do we, in doing that, we also address the question about the extent to which I mean, somebody called it an international program called it the new slavery, new forms of slavery, how pervasive it is, minors, etc., etc. So I think that as we address what is clearly a policy issue and a policy imperative, we also need to address the new context. And I think that it's very important that we should also look at this issue as we address the sex.
Thank you very much. And I'm going to ask us to, please give our panel a round of applause. And thank you for the unspoken contract of staying much longer than we had anticipated. I could see Khali giving me a number of gestures, but I wanted to make sure that all of you ask as many questions. My sense with this panel is that this is just the beginning. As every panelist was responding, I could hear just from the corner of my ear and eye that there's a lot of engagement. And I would really want to invite everybody to use the Not Yet Uhuru platform to raise some of your reflections, even about the sessions today. So while we've got different vloggers and bloggers and podcasts, we invite you that you sign up and you really share what your opinions are. I think there is so much more that I think people want to engage with the different things that were said, but also with a whole lot of other things that you want to question the different parties. And I do hope that as the elections draw nearer, in partnership with the Total Shutdown, Corruption Watch, and Country Duty, we would be able to find you as accessible, to be able to engage with you and ask the questions. And I hope you'll also be joining the Not Yet Uhuru podcast, where you will engage and see what are some of the issues. So on that note, let me thank Khali, who's our, what did you call yourself when we started? Yeah, the lead in this, to lead us to the next session.
We've come to our last item for the day. Before I close off, this is the last you'll hear of me for the day. I'd like some of, if the team of Not Yet Uhuru, if the ones that are here, please can they stand up so that you can see them? So if you want any information about, even after this, about the platform and about the work that they do on their platform, please contact them. These are our digital heroes who are going to bring us to freedom. Stand up, my peoples. Yes. Yeah. Tobile, why aren't you standing? Stand. Take your place, girl. She's the baby of the team. I think she's very nervous. But to close off, thank you very much for joining us. We're going to have one of our partners wrap this up, or why they've decided to partner with us. There are refreshments after her closing remarks. And thank you very much for joining us, Uhuru, in our lifetime. One more logistic. If you haven't signed the register in the foyer, please do so on your way out. Moira Campbell from Corruption Watch, please come close for us.
Okay, so the only reason I'm representing the total shutdown and Country Duty is because of your arm twisting, Khali. I think for Corruption Watch, I mean, it really was a no-brainer to be part of this initiative. For us, corruption is a human rights issue, but it's also a gender rights issue, and it's an abuse of power issue. So hopefully we're going to be also having this kind of panel discussion before the elections about exactly those aspects around corruption. I think I can say, I can speak with certainty on behalf of all the partners, and also a broader base of civil society that we hope to bring on board, that we truly applaud this initiative. It's not just, about time. I mean, it's 2018, it really is about time that we have a platform to hear young voices, young black voices, young women's voices. But it's also, it's not just about hearing the voices, it's about cranking up the volume. It's about really building that crescendo so that nobody, no political parties, nobody in this society, and I include civil society in that as well, can say that they haven't heard our stories, these stories, young women's stories about exactly what is going on the ground, and that they can't ignore the real lived experiences of women in this country. So I really applaud you, Soul City, for launching such an initiative. I mean, it's so overdue. We're going to have all our young people, including people on the ground that report corruption to us. We want to hear their voices on this platform as well. So thank you so much. This has been a brilliant event, so thank you.